to a bunch of people around the league. Okay, some positions maybe don't have that superstar that we have had in years past, but we do have a boatload of starters, particularly the defensive line, a bunch of really, really good players. So excited about it. Looking forward to seeing these guys in person in Indy, and look forward to your questions.
We're going to start with Jim Wyatt of the Tennessean.
Now TennesseeTitans.com. Yeah, and I appreciate you having me. I appreciate you having me leading off with the number one pick too. Daniel, how you doing? Appreciate your time.
You earned it, buddy. You earned the first question here.
So I noticed you've got Abdul Carter as your top prospect. I noticed you've got the Titans taking him at number one in your initial mock. Is he good enough that you just stick there and pick, or do you look to trade? And if and to kind of go along with that same question, how much interest, how much action do you think they'll get with a potential trade at one?
Well, I haven't heard much buzz about action at this point in time. Usually the combine, as you know, is when that can pick up a little bit and you'll start hearing some buzz if somebody falls in love with the quarterback. That's where the trades happen, and that would be, that will be interesting because I look at them, and to me, I think there's really a couple options. I think it's three players. I think it's Abdul Carter. I think it's Travis Hunter or Cam Ward. I think you're deciding between those three players. And then the fourth option is the trade. But to me, if I'm Tennessee, I'm not going past three unless I get an enormous haul. And I don't think you're going to get that in this draft. So to me, I think that's what their decision is going to come down to. I think, it depends on what you're looking for. I have a very similar grade on Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter. I have Abdul Carter a little bit higher than him. And it's such a premier position. And I think when you look at the pieces already on that defensive line and you go out and you get Abdul Carter, I think you've got a chance to have one of the best units in the league. So that's a good foundation to build off of. But they need to do their homework on Cam Ward. And if they feel confident and comfortable with him and they feel like he can be their guy going forward, I wouldn't have any issue whatsoever if they decided that was going to be the direction they went.
Thanks. Next question is from D. Orlando Ledbetter of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
How does this group of 14, George, I don't want you to go all 14, yeah. But Starks is the one that's interesting at, perhaps for the Falcons at 15, but maybe Walker, Mikal Williams, and Starks. How does this group look and project into the first round here?
Yeah, and they got a boatload of dudes. So I'll just go through those top three guys and kind of
that's good.
Yeah, Jalen Walker, he's one of my favorite players to study. He's got the versatility to play off the ball, on the ball. I think he's got a chance to be a special pass rusher. I don't know if we're going to see him do everything in Indianapolis. I know he, been nursing some things, but I anticipate when you see him run, if he does decide to run, he can run in the 4.4s. Like he's got legit explosive burst. Mm-hmm. He plays with a ton of energy. He's a tone setter. The thing I love about him is, I see he plays with energy and passion. He plays fast. He's physical. And then when you talk to the coaches at Georgia and they say like, this guy is like rare off the charts intangibles, leadership. He took over a couple games that the Texas game at Texas, that was a statement there. So I think he's a lock to go in the top 10. Mikal Williams is, gosh, I just wish we could have seen him healthy. If he doesn't get hurt in that Clemson game and we see him at full strength, I think we're talking about him as another, top 10 lock who's got a lot of freaky qualities to him, freaky traits to him. He can really get off the ball. He's got, a lot of power and violence as a rusher. He can set the edge. It's just the production hasn't been great, but that's because the guy wasn't healthy all year long, and they still roll guys through there. So I think the Trayvon Walker, experience and seeing how he's continued to develop with the Jags, I think that's, when it's all said and done, I will, I'll be more surprised than not if he's not all the way up there in the top 10. And then Starks is an intriguing one because you notice him when he was younger and kind of like popped on the scene, and man, he's such a easy mover, like a fluid athlete. He just didn't make as many plays this year. He made the big pick, a big time athletic interception down the field in the Clemson game. And then after that, just didn't make a ton of plays. But real reliable. He's obviously really smooth athlete, takes really good angles, gets guys on the ground. I like the fact that he's young. I think his best football is still ahead of him, and I like the fact that he has, safety nickel flex. It can do a lot of different things. So to me, I think it'll be it'll be interesting to see how he works out and how he tests. But he's he's right there to me more so in the back half of the first half than the first half of the first round.
Thanks a lot. Next question is from Ryan Dunleavy of the New York Post.
Hey, Daniel, can you hear me?
Yep, I got you, man.
Thanks for doing this. We need some franchise quarterbacks in New York, Giants and Jets. Giants and Jets. You mentioned Cam as a possibility for number one for the Titans, but not Shedeur, which makes me think you think there's a significant gap between them. And then you also have the Giants passing on Shedeur at 3 with all the buzz. I mean, Shedeur obviously thinks he's going to the Giants with his cleats and whatnot. What do you think of the top 2 quarterbacks, the separation, and their matches for the Giants and Jets?
Yeah, when I first watched the quarterbacks, I stacked them right next to each other, and they're totally different in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. The more that I've done, the more I've kind of created some separation, and that'll be reflected when the top 50 comes out next week, the updated top 50. I like Shedeur. I think Shedeur is, when you look at the things he does really well, the accuracy, anticipation, toughness, like he just keeps getting up after taking a beating. But some of the other things that Cam has, he doesn't have. It's just a little bit more twitch in his body. He's got a more live arm. I think he's more equipped to play in that division, in that stadium, in that environment that you're going to get with weather. I think Shedeur makes more sense, just as relying a little bit more as a touch thrower than a power thrower. I think he makes more sense, when you look at the Saints make sense to me, the Raiders make sense to me. So more so about fit than anything else when it comes to those guys. With the Giants not taking one in a mock draft, I always like to just run through different scenarios and what you're hearing. Okay, if this happens, then where do we go from here? The mock drafts, as you get through free agency, it'll crystallize a little bit more, but there has been a lot of chatter and talking to guys around the league. The Stafford stuff, I mean, I don't know if there's legs to it, but I know that it has got a lot of people in personnel departments and general managers intrigued in seeing what's going to transpire there with him and the Rams. And the fact that that they didn't just come out and say he's not going anywhere has led people to believe that that's a possibility. And when I looked at the Giants and you look at head coach and general manager, there's some pressure there. You need to get this thing going, especially after the team in your division just won the Super Bowl. So I looked at that and I am sitting here thinking, man, you talk about turning around, some excitement here in that market. And you trot out there week 1 and you've got, Matthew Stafford throwing the ball to Malik Neighbors. You've got him, looking at Travis Hunter getting some snaps on the offensive side of the ball. You've got who knows what else they can do with the money they have in free agency. And it is Cooper Kupp, part of that. Is that a package deal with him and Stafford? So that was my mind. That was kind of where I was going in my fantasy land as we got to that mock draft.
Next question is from Nate Davis of USA Today. Nate?
Hey, DJ, I wanted to just, you're good at synopsizing guys from certain schools. It seems like this year maybe we have more on the quality side for Michigan, not the same quantity as last year, but just thought maybe if you could sum those guys up for us.
Sure. I'll rip through a couple of them here. It's a good group. Mason Graham, gosh, he's so fun. I watched him on tape and I fell in love with him. And then I got a chance to go to their game against Oregon, and there's a bunch of personnel guys and GMs down on the field, and we're walking down there, and I see Mason Graham walk by, and of course he's next to Kenneth Grant, his teammate, who looks like he's a cartoon character, like he's an Adonis, how big he is. And I'm looking at Mason Graham and body type, and I'm like, gosh, maybe I need to adjust my grade. I think maybe I'm just too high on this guy. And then I proceeded to watch the game, and I was like, nope, he's just really, really good. So I hope people don't overthink it with him as we get to the spring and kind of the further we get away from football. But he's got crazy elite leverage, balance, and instincts. You can see there's a wrestling background there. He's just never on the ground. He gets underneath guys. I just wrote down when I was looking at my notes, I had block destruction written down so many different times. He's just a real aggressive player who's got, instincts and can dominate the game against the run, and I think has more to offer as a pass rusher. Loveland, I think I think some teams are going to have him as the top tight end. It's two different styles there with him and Tyler Warren, but he's someone who can really, really run, can get in and out of breaks, fluid for a bigger guy. He can go get it with a huge catch radius. He's tough and physical after the catch, and in the run game, he does enough. He stays connected and shows want to. So he's one of the top 10 players in the draft for me. Will Johnson is an interesting one because there's so much, hype on him coming into the season, and he's this big, athletic, rangy corner. He's got ball production, but I did not think he played his best this year. I thought there were times where he wasn't super interested against the run, and he got trucked a couple times against the run. So I just want to see a little more physicality there, and then some guys got on top of him. So didn't get a chance to finish out the year healthy. So I think this will be a big spring for him to kind of recapture some of that momentum he had off of a much better season in 23. Kenneth Grant I mentioned, just massive. He's a people mover, and talking to the folks where he's been doing a lot of his training, at 340 pounds, you should not be able to move around like that. So you're hoping and dreaming on this, Dexter Lawrence type ascension for him once he gets to the NFL. Hasn't put it all together, but it's all in there. And then lastly, I'll give you one more, and there's a bunch more guys, but Josiah Stewart he's a bolt of lightning off the edge. He's undersized, but if you don't look at the size on your paper and just watch the tape, he doesn't play small at all. He can really generate power as a rusher, and he's someone who plays with just maniacal effort and energy. One of my favorite players to study.
Next question is from Nate Ulrich of the Akron Beacon Journal. Nate?
Hey, Daniel. In your latest mock draft, and you touched on the quarterback debate earlier with Ward versus Sanders, but to the Browns at number 2, when you talk about fit, what specifically had you going Ward in that spot?
Yeah, so similar discussion. Having scouted in that division for a couple different teams, we always wanted guys who were, real rugged and strong. It's a physical division. You're going to play in wind and weather as you go throughout the season. Arm strength matters a little bit more there. Look, I'm not saying that Shedeur can't play there. He could fit in the system for sure. And, if they went in that direction, that wouldn't, totally blindside me or shock me. I just, know from being in that division and talking to people inside that division, that's something that carries a little more weight than maybe in other spots. So I just liked his ability. If you look at Baker, and I know I obviously went sideways there at the end, but even though Baker wasn't a really big guy, I thought his arm played really, really well there. And there were some ups and some downs, but I didn't think that was an issue there at all. And I think there is some of that, with Cam Ward. He's just got a real, real live arm. So that's why I like that fit.
Thank you.
Next question is from Jonathan Alexander of the Houston Chronicle.
Hey, DJ, I appreciate you doing this. The Texans pick at number 25, obviously, and obviously they need guard, defensive tackle, and wide receiver. Just considering the realistic expectations of what could be there, who would you consider be like a home run type of pick for them?
Well, you mentioned the interior of the offensive line is someplace you can address. I think you can address that interior offensive line on, later on in the draft. I think there is some depth along that interior. The two receivers that I just think were ready-made to play there, and one of them is the obvious one, is Emeka Egbuka, because of his connection and history with C.J. Stroud, but can play inside, can play outside, just really, really smart and instinctive and tough. I think he would make a lot of sense there. He's, there's two guys. When I look at the Houston Texans, it's Egbuka, is for those exact same reasons that I mentioned, and then the exact same with Matthew Golden. I have those guys right next to each other on my list. Matthew Golden, I think both these guys actually are going to run a lot faster than people think, but a lot of the same attributes. I've become kind of obsessed with receivers with the thought and keeping an eye out for guys who are grounded through the catch. guys who really trust their hands and run through the ball. I've just put more importance on that. You just see the really great receivers in the NFL have that trait, that quality, that confidence in their hands, and allows them to do so much after the catch as well. So both those guys are grounded through the catch, tough, smart, instinctive players that I think would be home run fits there with CJ Stroud.
Next question is from Brian Wacker of the Baltimore Sun.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for doing this. Just a couple of quick questions. The Ravens, they've got 11 picks in the draft. How do you sort of grade the overall quality of it depth-wise? And then secondly, is this a draft that they don't trade up very often, but, is it a draft where you could see maybe trading up in the first round to take maybe an edge rusher like a Jalen Walker, Mike Green, or somebody who can have that kind of immediate impact edge rusher wise, a position they've kind of struggled with in those middle rounds, finding those guys?
Well, one of the things you look at with the Ravens is because they amass all these picks and because they've played the comp game, better than anybody else in the NFL, is you have options. So if you absolutely fall in love with one of those edge rushers, yeah, they have the ammunition to do it. I just don't necessarily think you have to. I think there's a lot of depth along the defensive front, not just edge rushers, but D tackles. If they want to be patient, I think one comes to them. Shamar Stewart is someone that I paired up with them who's just got a ton of twitch and a ton of ability out of Texas A&M. I think his best football is ahead of him. Even someone like Donovan Izaraku from Boston College kind of fits what they like in rushers. He's real long. He's firm. He's got some power, and he's got a lot of production. So, and we can go on into day two. Like there's gonna be edge rushers there. The one thing, my ears perked up thinking about them moving up was with your question was maybe an offensive tackle, depending on what happens with Ronnie Stanley. If Ronnie Stanley were to depart in free agency, and say it's a Simmons or someone like that they really like and have a high grade on, there's not a lot of depth of starting tackle caliber players in this draft. So that would be more in line with my thinking there.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Martin Frank of the Delaware News Journal.
Hey, Daniel, appreciate you doing this as always.
No problem.
When you're looking at the Eagles at number 32, as far as their pick is concerned, it seems like they have like quite a few needs and everything, but is there also a chance they could trade out of that pick? And what do you think the possibilities would be for that?
I wouldn't rule anything out with Howie, and go in either direction, but their roster's in such great shape, and we'll see what happens with free agency. You got some key guys there, but they have so much roster depth, and they're traditionally a big line of scrimmage team in the draft. And this is a draft, especially as I mentioned on the defensive side, there's depth and quality there. So they could, if somebody wants to jump up, I could easily see them sliding back and trying to get some more shots at it here on day two. I think there's a lot of value in day two in this year's draft class. So that would be more likely to me than moving north. I think would be moving south. But again, don't rule anything out with them. And when in doubt, just sit there and wait for some uber talented, Georgia, Alabama player to kind of fall down into their lap.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Bob McManaman of the Arizona Republic.
Hey, Daniel, thank you for doing this. Question is about the Cardinals, obviously here. I know 16 where you've got a lot of guys kind of in that area, but I'm more curious about maybe three guys you really like that could be available at 47, maybe whether they're defense or not, but I could see them doubling down on two defensive players.
Yeah. 47. I still think, again, with the edge rushers specifically, which is a big need for that football team, as you know, just third down pressure rate, two areas indicate, they've got some work to do there. So if you're looking in that range, you're talking about, Jack Sawyer from Ohio State comes into the mix there, who's kind of a real physical, rugged edge rusher who can also really set the edge. Landon Jackson from Arkansas had a monster Senior Bowl, and he's 6'5" and change, 273 pounds. He can really rush with that long arm, physical. He can close. He can run. He plays with effort. Those are a couple guys, and I would say Prince Umanmielen. I'm going to get that right when we get to the combine, so forgive me. But out of Ole Miss, he is another one who popped at the Senior Bowl. Real long, bendy, athletic. He can really cover ground. So he's again, there's no shortage of edge rushers, especially in that. That's kind of almost a sweet spot where I like that clump of players.
Next question is from Stu Jackson of therams.com.
Hey, DJ, just looking at the Rams at 26, do you see sticking and picking as the best option for them, or in order to address their needs, would trading back and trying to accumulate more shots in the top 100 make more sense based on what you think their needs?
Well, Les has done such a good job, in that range, and so getting out of there and collecting extra picks, I'm all for that, especially when you kind of look at the direction that they could be looking. The tackle, I wouldn't feel as confident of what you're going to get if you trade back, but there's still a need for corners, receivers. They could pluck a tight end. I mean, that's good position groups there on day 2. So, if they were to slide back a little bit and collect some more resources there, I've got a lot of respect and appreciation for their ability to scout and find guys there. So that would definitely make sense to me.
Next question is from Nick Suss of the Tennessean.
Hey, Daniel, you mentioned at the top that you wouldn't necessarily see the Titans moving past 3, or you wouldn't advocate for them moving past 3. I'm just curious what your opinion would be on what a reasonable haul would be for moving if you're only moving 1 or 2 picks back.
Oh gosh, I'd have to pull up the comps on it. I don't have it in front of me right now, but it does vary in terms of what the overall feel is on the class and how much they want to move out. I mean, I'm sure they'll have opportunities to slide back a little bit if they if they want to. I just don't know if this is going to be the traditional haul that you've seen for some of these other years where you had and I know obviously Caleb Williams was a little further to travel there, but in previous years, I just think there's been a higher opinion overall in the quarterback class, which drives price. So to move back to 3, I mean, you're getting an extra, getting next year's 1, I guess. You start there, but in terms of how much on top of that, I don't know that you get traditional costs and prices this year.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Eric Dalala of DenverBroncos.com.
Hey, DJ, Sean Payton's talked about wanting to find this joker player, whether it's a tight end in the receiving game or a running back that has that potential out of the backfield. I know you had Loveland in the first round, but any day 2 guys that you think could kind of fit that mold if they decide to go somewhere else in the first round?
Yeah, there's some fun ones. And it got a lot of people like myself, I think, looking around going, okay, who would you classify in that department as mismatch type players? So if I'm going to go running backs and they are picking at 51 and 85. So if I'm just looking at some running backs that I think are mismatch type players, Jaden Blue in the pass game out of Texas, like he's a legit 4-3 guy, and they use him on a bunch of different ways in the pass game. Angle routes, he can snap guys off, he can run up the seam. Even just getting him the ball in the flat with his speed, he's a weapon. So that one, to me, I don't think you'd have to take him in the second. I think you could, get him in the 3rd round, but that was one when I was thinking about, how they would use guys. That was one that definitely popped into my head from the running back position. RJ Harvey's another one out of Central Florida who's, compact. He's, he's under 5'8", he's 207 pounds. But when I watched him, I was like, okay, who does he remind me of? And this guy's like a mix of Devontae Freeman and Tariq Cohen. Like he's that type of just fast, low to the ground, shifty, is just going to be a nightmare. And they use him on wheel routes. They get him the ball in the pass game as well. So I thought him, those are kind of outside the second round, some fun mismatch type players. And then from the tight end standpoint, I think Fannin is a good one from Bowling Green, who's a little bit undersized, just over 6'3". He's just under 240 pounds, but he's just got a real knack for it, a real feel for it, creating separation. He kind of reminds me, it's sacrilegious to say it because he's now going into the Hall of Fame, but he's like a mini Antonio Gates, just with his movements, just how he kind of moves around. It's kind of a unique movement style that he has. But you're questioning, like, how fast is this guy? And then you watch Penn State and you watch Texas A&M, and he's just kind of running away from everybody and creating a bunch of big plays. So I think you'd have to take him in the second round. I don't think he would be there in the third round, but he's definitely a fun mismatch guy.
Next question is from Chris Franklin of NJ.com.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for doing this again. The Eagles have Zach Bond, Mekhi Becton, Josh Sweat heading to free agency. And if they can't sign any of those guys, who do you think would be a good spot around that 32 or even in the top of the second round that could either fit Vic Fangio's scheme or could be a quote-unquote Stoutland guy if expected?
Yeah, well, let's go to the offensive line first of all. So if I'm looking at the interior offensive line, there's some interest to me. The no-brainer would be Grace Abel if he was there from North Dakota State, because he has the versatility, and I think that's one of the underrated aspects of what the Eagles have done. Everybody talks about how big they are and physical and all that stuff, but look at the number of guys on that offensive line that have cross-trained at different positions. You mentioned Becton coming in from a tackle to a guard. Landon Dickerson can play any of those spots inside. Juergens played guard, plays center. Lane, if you needed him to, I think kick over to the left in a heartbeat. But Zabel, to me, out of North Dakota State, he's got legit 5-position flex. I think he's better off kicking inside. If Becton were to leave, I think he's plug and play year one at the guard spot. So that one I like a lot. Miles Frazier outside that, when you get into day two from LSU, he's got size over 6'5". He's 324 pounds. I just think he knows how to play. He's played some outside as well, but he's definitely going to be a guard. But he's got some power, some torque, and some turn to him. So that one would definitely be a match there. And then when you look at linebackers, it's not a great off the ball linebacker year. He's not going to take a linebacker in the first round, but if somehow Jihad Campbell were to get there, I can't imagine he would, but that is he's a rangy, versatile, athletic dude who can play off the ball, he can play on the ball, he can run like crazy. He's got a bunch of upside as a rusher too, so that would be one there. And then some of the linebackers as you get beyond that, I like Pupal from Ole Miss. Maybe third round. Cody Simon, same, out of Ohio State. Jeffrey Bassa, Oregon. Barrett Carter, Clemson. Like that group of guys to me is kind of in that third round range.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Joe Rutter of the Pittsburgh Tribune Review.
Yeah, hi, Daniel. I know in your two mocks you've had the Steelers taking offense in the first round. If they were to address the defensive line, which is getting older, what kind of player at 21 you could potentially see being there that fits their style?
Yeah, if you're looking at pick 21 for the Steelers, I mean, gosh, Michael Williams would be a lot of fun, just because the physicality they require, setting the edge, all that stuff. He checks that box, and I think he's got so much upside as a rusher. I don't anticipate he'll be there at that point in time. Him and Mike Green are probably both gone, but either one of those picks would be, to me, home runs. Shamar Stewart is raw as can be, as we talked about a little bit earlier, but man, there's a lot to work with. And I can't imagine with someone with his physical gifts that he has, getting a chance to learn from TJ. Golly, that would be fun if he were to get where he's capable of getting talent-wise. There's a lot in his body, so they'll have options if they want to go with an edge rusher. They're going to have someone there that's worthy of that pick. They're not going to have to reach if that's truly the position that they wish to address.
Next question is from Andrew Kramer of Minnesota Star Tribune.
Hey, DJ, thanks for doing this. I wanted to ask you about the Vikings at 24. You've got them taking a running back. Why do you think the running back run isn't going to start until the 20s this time around? And then if they don't go running back, what other kind of positions did you consider for them at that spot?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to figure out when the run's going to go. And just to be totally honest, everybody, I kind of wanted to have some fun with that too, with Ashton Jeanty in a scenario where he can kind of fall down a little bit. Ashton Jeanty is my third player in the draft, so I am a huge believer in his. I think he is extremely high floor to go along with an extremely high ceiling. I think he's a special player. That the interesting part is, and just a lot of this comes from talking to people around the league, is because of the depth of the class, and it's really good. That, man, if you have multiple needs, maybe you could see a scenario where teams are going to punt on running backs early, and then just know that I still got some options there on day 2, and that's with the full appreciation that there is more love for running backs around the league after this last season, with all those free agents. All the leading rushers in the league were all free agents that showed their value, and then we've seen with some of these young backs in the league what they've done, led by Jahmyr Gibbs. But that's why I went running back with the Minnesota Vikings, because I just think they saw inside their division what you had with Jahmyr Gibbs, and man, that would be an explosive player to add to their mix. So if Minnesota didn't go in that direction, and I look at some of their other needs, interior offensive line would be one, corner would be another. If you just look at the corner position, if we're looking at guys that could potentially be fits and options there, I think Azariah Thomas from Florida State would be in the mix, and I think you're going to start hearing a lot more about Maxwell Hairston after the combine from Kentucky. He's a really good player. I think he's got a chance to go in the first round.
Next question is from Dave Burkett of the Detroit Free Press. Dave?
Hey, DJ. Appreciate your time on these as always. Little two-part question for you, I guess. There's a lot of teams sort of at the back of round 1 that have been rumored to be, maybe potential suitors for Myles Garrett or some of those other pass rushers if they come out deep drafted, defensive line, obviously. So can you walk me through the pluses and minuses of making a deal? And then obviously for a team like the Lions, if they decided to use their picks on defensive line help, who are some guys that you could see fitting in at 28?
Yeah, I mean, that was a team that made the most sense for me with Myles Garrett was Detroit. Just because, if they ever are comfortable with moving him, which it sounds like at this point they are not. But if they are comfortable, to me, you get him outside the conference and he goes to Detroit. Detroit has, the roster that's ready to win right now, ready to win a championship, and that could be a finishing piece. So, I'd be willing to be pretty aggressive. I think if I were Brad Holmes on that front, knowing that could bring a parade to my city, I would be aggressive and do whatever I had to do and try and make something like that happen. So we'll just have to see if it's a legit possibility. Everything talking to people, as of late around the league, the expectation is, he's not, they're not going to move him. He's not going to go anywhere. So we'll see what happens. If you're looking at edge rushers for where they're picking at pick number 28, you start getting into, James Pierce. He's going to be an interesting one. He could go in the top 15. He could go bottom of 1. He could go top of 2. Like, there's a wide range on him. He's a lean, skinny rusher, but he has got a ton of juice and explosiveness. He really knows how to rush. His first 3 steps are pretty dynamic. So that would be one we'll see in the mix there. Again, I've mentioned some of these names before, but Shamar Stewart, we'll see what happens with him. That would be another one I think could factor in for them if they're looking for edge rushers. But you can get them all throughout the draft. You can find them, especially day 2. There's a lot of other good options there for rushers.
Thank you.
Next question is from Matthew Paris of the New Orleans Times-Picayune.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for doing this. Just curious, you talked a lot about the depth with the defensive line, but could you talk about the overall the quality of the high end edge rushers, and specifically for the Saints at number 9? Just some few options for them there.
Yeah. Well, Abdul Carter's gone. Jalen Carter, if he's there, I would run the card up. If you had an opportunity to get him, I just think he makes all the sense in the world for him. And he's just so dynamic, and not only just with the talent that he brings. I think in year 1 with Kellen Moore, I think having someone like that who's gonna he's going to take your message and spread it around. He's that type of dude. So that one to me would be a home run. And then, I think Michael Williams is the next one that would be, a worthy candidate for where that slot is. And I think he's another one. You may be a little patient with him, but it's all in there and the upside is tremendous. So I think all those guys or both those guys would be, legit options and would provide some serious juice to a pass rush. So that's going to be curious to me is what direction they go position wise, because I just think Kellen Moore coming off of the year he had and seeing the value in the trenches and what they had in Philadelphia, I'd just be surprised if they went anywhere outside O-line, D-line.
Did you mean Walker instead of Carter, by the way?
Yeah. Sorry, Jalen Walker. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, I got so many games. Jalen Walker, Jalen Carter. There's 55 Georgia Jalen's and Carters. I feel like.
Thank you. Next question is from Jana Bartle of The Athletic.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for doing this. I'm Jana with The Athletic. I had a little bit of a broader question for you for leading up to the combine. Last year we saw some of those elite prospects sitting out of drills. Do you see that trend continuing, and how has the way teams view and analyze the combine changed throughout the years?
Oh, I appreciate that. It's a good question. I think you're going to continue to see it. I think especially with guys who have a long track record that have played well, have been viewed as kind of top 10 picks for an extended period of time, and they have all the tape that's out there, and teams have the GPS information. So that's the case that they'll present as to why they're not going to, to be active at the combine. So I think that's something that we'll continue to see with the top tier players. I don't think it's going to spread all the way through. I don't. I think it's an opportunity for a lot of these guys to compete, and a lot of these guys still really want to do that. And if you're not a lock in terms of your positioning, there still is a belief you can go out there and help yourself. So I still think there's value in it. I think certain positions maybe more value than others. I've said this over the years, but I've always felt like the corners have the most opportunity to help themselves at the combine. They run well, they move well. That can answer a lot of questions and can help guys maybe more so than any other position. So I do think you'll see it. I know there's a growing trend there of not doing some of the psychological testing and those things. I don't think that's going to go back to the way it was. I think you'll see more and more people that are going to probably opt out of that in the future. And there's enough information and resources out there for teams to be able to figure this thing out without all that. So I don't think that's that big a deal.
Thanks.
Next question is from John Glennon of the Nashville Post.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for your time. Touching back on the Titans there at number one again, kind of a devil's advocate approach. I know you've got Abdul Carter going there, but if you're the Titans, a quarterback needy team, why not take a quarterback? If you think he's better than what you have and you can win with him, and you don't know when your next time, picking at number one or close to it will be, couldn't you make a good case for taking a quarterback there?
I think that's a great question and something I've been thinking a lot about, and I did some homework on it because I knew this would probably come up. But I still believe you can make a case, okay, he's better than what we have, but is that the marker? Because then I would say, well, if you're going to be right back, 2 or 3 years from now saying this isn't good enough, we need better, especially when you're in the AFC where we've got all these cyborg quarterbacks you have to compete with. If you don't want to draft somebody you're going to have to replace within a couple years just because he was a little bit better than the guy you had currently on your roster. And the pushback I get when I've said that is, yeah, but you never know when you're going to be up there again. And so we looked it up and okay, the Bears were up there and they had a quarterback that was better than what they had, and they passed on it, and they turned around and got Caleb Williams the next year. There's teams that could have taken Will Levis, the Commanders, the Patriots, the Vikings. They all passed. The Commanders come back and get Daniels. The Patriots come back, get May. The Vikings come back, get McCarthy. The Texans passed on Kenny Pickett twice. They got C.J. Stroud the next year. The Jags passed on Jordan Love. They got Trevor Lawrence the next year. The Bills passed on Mahomes. Now, obviously, That's one that's worked out for both teams. Maybe more so initially here from Kansas City, but they got Josh Allen the next year. So I do think there is some precedent there that, that you can't just say he's 5%, 10% better than what we have, so we have to take that position. That's just my thoughts on it. And, that's why you have to decide, do you envision with the quarterback you take at number 1 that he's going to be able to help your team compete against Mahomes, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert? Like, you need to have those honest conversations in the draft room.
Thanks.
Next question is from Dan Wiederer of the Chicago Tribune.
Hey, DJ, it's obviously offensive line season here in Chicago. So I wanted to ask you first about Calvin Banks, specifically at the tackle position, what you see in him. And then with Zabel, I know you like his versatility, but what are some of the things on his tape and his Senior Bowl performance that really jumped out at you?
Sure. With Banks, I love the fact that he's 320 pounds. He's thick. He's sturdy. He can bend. He's athletic enough to really sink and bend. Keeps his hands in tight. He plays with patience. The stuff that he gets in trouble with is sometimes he sets a little bit deep, and then he ends up getting in some trouble that way when he kind of creates more runway. So I think if he could be a little more firm and not getting quite as much depth in his set, that he'll be able to solve that problem. And then in the run game, I just want to see him show a little bit more strain and finish, just a little bit more nasty to him in the run game. But he's a good athlete. He's someone that I think can play. I think even though he's not the tallest guy in the world, I still think he could hold up and play tackle, no problem. And I think he could. I think he could be hell on wheels as a guard. So that's Banks. And then when you look at Gray Zabel, man, the week of practice, there were not many bad reps at all during the week of practice for him. In the game, he got on his edges a little bit, and as he's kind of moving around playing all these different positions, but. He's someone, again, who's got really good balance. He's always under control. He's never on the ground. He's got strong hands. He's really aware, in terms of seeing things and picking things up. He's a guy who's played a lot of football, who's polished, and answered any of the smaller school, so to speak, questions at the Senior Bowl, even though North Dakota State's been, a school that's pumped out a lot of linemen. So, I'm a huge fan of his, and I think he's definitely in the mix to go in the first round.
Next question is from Ben Standig of The Athletic.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for doing this. For a team like Washington, they've got needs on both lines, but of course there's this push to get Jaden Daniels more weapons. It always feels like when you have a quarterback like that, he can raise the level of receivers more than you have to get him star receivers, if that kind of makes sense. So how do you kind of weigh that option? Like, you have this quarterback, but you also need to get build the line to help them get to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's arguments you can make on both sides of that, but I do agree though that quarterbacks elevate the play of others, and if you want to start, let's get him protected and let's keep him healthy, and then let's be really good at scouting and evaluating players that we can find without premium resources, and let's surround them with some of those guys as well. I think once that foundation in the offensive line is built and steady, then I think you can go shopping for some of the other things. I kind of always use the analogy of, you got to go shop at the hardware store before you go to the toy store. So I would continue to try and address that offensive line, not only so we can run the ball better and we can do different things, but just to keep him upright and healthy. And I think you can, Adam Peters is really good. He's one of the best evaluators in the NFL, and he's been around a lot of good receivers throughout his career, especially the group that they had up there in San Francisco. So I'm confident he'll be able to find receivers without necessarily using the premium resources.
Next question is from Cassidy Hill of Panthers.com.
Hey, DJ, thanks for doing this. You had in your mock draft, the Walker coming here, but also kind of mentioned the idea of a trade back. I'm just wondering, when you're looking at a team like the Panthers that have so many needs across defense, is this a class that is deep enough to pass on a guy like Walker just to get more pieces?
Well, I mean, that's a good discussion and it's a good debate in the room. I mean, I don't think you want to do it just to get a 4th round pick, but I think if you can, get some quality resources, get another pick on day 2, he's a great player. And I wouldn't have any criticism if they decide we're just going to stick and pick him and go forward. But when you have this many holes, and this is a draft that does have a lot of talent and depth, on the defensive front, I'd be interested in that option. I'm not saying, that's the right or the wrong way to go. I just think, man, there's so many holes there, and you could fill a bunch of them if you could slide back a little bit. So, I think that's a good debate and a good discussion. I could spend 10 minutes and argue it each way. So they just have to see what they get. I definitely think you'd want to get a premium. I don't think you just do that just to go back and get an extra pick.
When I get called on, which could happen any second now, or not. Let's see.
Next question is from David Ferrones of the Fort Lauderdale Sun Sentinel.
Nope.
Hi, DJ. Thanks for doing this. I saw you went Tyler Booker to the Dolphins at 13 in your latest mock. Beyond the obvious needed guard from Miami, why him? And how many different paths could you see the Dolphins going with that pick, considering Chris Courier likes to go for his best player available and not necessarily by need early in a draft where they do have 10 picks to address needs?
Yeah, I just think he's a perfect marriage of need and fit and value. So, Booker to me is one of the more consistent players that I've watched in this class. He's big, he's powerful. He's someone that when you talk to the folks at Alabama, they just rave about him in terms of the work ethic, the leadership. Someone there told me he was like the Will Anderson of their offense in terms of the leadership. Someone had been around there for a while. So I think all those things considered, I think you have somebody who's really, really firm in pass pro. With Tua, I think the interior of that offensive line being firm is very important. So that's one that I just thought was just a home run pick for them in terms of all those factors coming together. That's why that one made a lot of sense to me. Defensive tackle could be an area they could go as well. And there's no shortage of defensive tackles that are intriguing in this draft. I mentioned them a little bit earlier, with Kenneth Grant. That would be a fun one to throw into their mix as well, just as someone who is already dominant against the run, but somebody I think's got a lot of upside as a rusher, and someone who, if they can stay healthy on the edges, someone who will benefit those guys just because he's gonna take away the escape hatch, just his ability to push the pocket, even as he's growing and developing and evolving as a rusher. I know he can do that. He can put his hands in your chest and walk you back and take away the escape route as those edge rushers get home. So that'd be another one I think that would make a lot of sense there.
Thanks.
Next question is from Tim Mylick of Cleveland.com.
Daniel, thanks again for doing this. It's kind of a quick 2-parter when it comes to the quarterbacks. Obviously, this isn't as strong a QB class as 2024. Likely not to get more than 2 or maybe 3 QBs in there. I guess part 1 is how would Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders fit if you stack them compared to last year's guys as far as the top 6? And then if you're a team like the Browns at number 2, how much does the idea of taking the idea of ceiling variance, like Cam Ward with a higher ceiling, Shedeur with a higher floor, how much do you think that should weigh into a decision if you're a team like the Titans or the Browns or the Giants and say you have a choice between both guys?
Yeah, I mean, that's the age-old debate, right? Do you want safe and floor, or do you want, kind of exciting and upside? I always feel like, again, for the same reasons I've referenced earlier, it's just that the high level of quarterback play, particularly in the AFC right now, it's hard to go with the floor instead of the ceiling there, and know, hey, if we go with the ceiling and we can hopefully have enough a rope to come around and try and go get another one at some point in time. I mean, nothing's guaranteed, but I always tend to be a little bit more, let's chase the upside a little bit when we're up there. So that's the direction I would go. When you look at this group compared to last year, I just pull up my list from last year. I had Cam Ward with the same grade as Bo Nix. So that would put him behind those top 4 for me. So he'd be, kind of in that fifth range. And Michael Penix I had just slightly ahead of Shedeur. So Shedeur would be behind those guys, behind Caleb Drake, Jaden McCarthy, Nix, Penix. Then I would have Shedeur right behind that group.
Thanks a bunch.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Ryan Mink of BaltimoreRavens.com.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, DJ. Just curious, how do you see the cornerbacks and safety classes? I know last year had a ton of depth at corner, especially a lot of guys went high. How do you see that in the front end of that group and then the depth there? Can the Ravens find a plug-and-play starter if they don't bring Brandon Stevens back? And then similarly at safety, the Ravens are kind of looking for a potential starter there, or at least a third safety.
Yeah, I think it's a little deeper at corner than safety this year. And if we're, looking at the Ravens, if we look where they're picking on day 2, like 59, 91, 59, I look at somebody like Trey Amos from Ole Miss. That would be someone I think would be a really interesting fit for them. Parrish from Kansas State, who I think could play inside, can play outside. Those are some intriguing players. Quincy Riley from Louisville would be in that like 3rd round range. Is a good one who kind of plays with a little bit of that edge that they like there in Baltimore. So those are some of the corners. When you look at the safety group, 2nd round safeties that late 1st round, by the way, South Carolina's Nick Amonwari, if he was there, I would turn the card in. I think he'd be a fun player for them to play with. He's big, he's physical, plays more near the line of scrimmage. He makes a lot of plays buzzing underneath the ball, and he's a physical, firm tackler, and he's an aggressive dude. I would be excited about that at the end of the 1st round. And then when you start getting into the 2nd, 3rd round at the safety position, I really like Jalen Reed from Penn State, who's 212 pounds and can run. He just plays really, really well. Timing and burst as a blitzer. He can play the ball. 3rd round wise, Ransom from Ohio State, Makubu from Texas, Billy Bowman from Oklahoma. So those are some of the names of those guys. But I would say in terms of the depth of it, I feel like you're getting a little bit longer group there at the corner group.
Great. Thanks, DJ.
Mm-hmm.
Next question is from Bill Huber of On SI.
Hey, DJ, how you doing?
Doing great.
Good. I appreciate your time on this. You probably heard Josh Jacobs at the Super Bowl talking about the Packers need a number 1 receiver. I'm not sure that guy's available in free agency. They don't pick receivers in the 1st, and he kind of hit on those guys anyway. But Green Bay has had a sweet spot in the 2nd round at receiver. Kind of who do you like there? And whether it's early or late, who do you like as a kind of a big play guy with some, not just a fast guy, but a guy who can actually play with some big playability?
Sure. I think somebody's mic is open, by the way. So when we look at the Green Bay Packers, first of all, with where they're picking, I pull their number up here. They are picking 54. So at 54, you're looking for a big play wide receiver. Trey Harris is a good all-around receiver out of Ole Miss. I think that's about the range where you're going to see this clump here with Trey Harris from Ole Miss, Jaden Higgins from Iowa State, Jack Besh from TCU. All those guys are big. Trey Harris is almost 6'2". Higgins is almost 6'4". Jack Beck's 6'1" and a quarter, 214 pounds. Those guys are all kind of in that range of the draft. Torrey Horton is another one from Colorado State who's going to be around that range. All those guys are big. All those guys can make plays down the field. All those guys are going to work out well in the red zone. They're going to be point producers. So that's a good clump there of wideouts that I think would make some sense. If they wanted to go with a little more of the compact, explosive player in that mix, which I think they already possess. But to me, you look at Jalen Noel from Iowa State, who's going to put on a show at the combine. He is really, really explosive, and he can play inside. I think even as an undersized player, he could play outside. And then Jalen Royals from Utah State, who's got a real compact, 210 pounds. Actually, kind of looks like Randall Cobb to kind of go back in the old school there. But there's a good clump of receivers there in that 2nd round range, and as you mentioned, they've done a great job of identifying those guys.
Thanks, appreciate it.
Sure.
Next question is from James Crepa of the Oregon.
DJ, wanted your perspective on three of Oregon's guys, starting with Connerly and Harmon and Birch. And I know you've mocked Connerly into the first, but where Harmon and Birch fall in your projection so far.
Sure. I actually have Harmon even over him on my list personally. But Harmon's just really disruptive. He's got quick hands. He just lives on the other side of the line of scrimmage. He's really instinctive. He's aware. He knows where blocks are coming from. And he gets up the field. So he's a fun player. I want to see him use power a little bit more. He flashes it. It's all in there. But I'd love to see him play into his power a little bit more. But I think he's bottom one, top of two type pick. Connerly is just, he's got that, sturdy frame, long arms. He's real patient. He's got quick feet. The issue with him is just going to be he's not a great bender. And that's how you can kind of get caught like he did in the clip that got sent around from Mike Green at the Senior Bowl. So that's going to be something he's going to have to continue to work through. It's just getting a little bit lower, bending a little bit better. And then similarly to Banks, as I was talking about earlier, just a little more strain and finish in the run game. But, the grade I gave him puts him kind of bottom one, top of two in that range. And then Birch was the other one who's an interesting player to watch just because he's so big, but he's kind of more of a finesse player than a real physical player. Not a real violent guy, but he's nifty. He's got, plays that long arm move. He's got a real steady bull rush, not real, dynamic, twitchy, explosive, but he can hold up with his length at the point of attack. And he does play really hard to close and chase plays from the backside. I thought he was more kind of, bottom two to middle three. That's where I had him on my list.
Thank you.
Next question is from Jerry McDonald of the San Jose Mercury News.
Okay, Daniel, just to borrow you from your analogy, the 49ers have accumulated a lot of toys over the year, and they may need a visit to the hardware store in terms of offensive, defensive lines. I'm curious what you're thinking they might do at 11 and who's available to them in those areas.
Yeah, where they're picking at 11, they're going to be able to get a really good player. And I'm curious. The one thing, we talked about him as one of the top players in the draft with Mason Graham. I'll be curious to see how he goes through the spring. As I mentioned, I think his tape is so good, but I'm not sure he's going to, totally ace the spring part of it. If you're looking for someone I think would just be a home run pick for him, what's the dream scenario? To me, it would be Mason Graham, where to fall down to him, where they could, scoop him up and pick him up. But where they're picking, we've talked about Walker from Georgia. That's probably a good chance that he's gone at that point in time. Williams is the other one. It's kind of that same clump of players, that same group of players. The player who's a great scheme fit for them, which I think would be more of a trade back than necessarily take him right there at 11, would be, Walter Nolan, who's, they with their kind of jet front and they like to play up the field. Chris Kasirk, they want to really, really get off the ball and penetrate and go. And he's really, really twitched up. So Walter Nolan to me would be someone if you slid down a little bit just to get a little bit more value, that would be a defensive tackle that I think would be a really fun fit for that group.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Rainer Sabin of the Detroit Free Press.
Hi, Daniel. Just wanted to check in with you regarding the Lions and their history under Brad Holmes and what you think the common thread is that kind of ties their draft picks, and in light of that, what kind of players in the range that they're picking at 29 is going to be the type of player that they'll be looking for in that range specifically?
Well, I think he's been really intentional about how they've built their team. They've just found, first of all, they started with, building it through the foundation with the offense and defensive line and finding guys with excellent play temperament, guys that are finishers that play with effort and are physical. I think that was kind of the first part of the build. And then after that, they went hunting for as many dynamic players as they can find. And with Jahmyr Gibbs, Jameson Williams, the juice that they brought to that offense, Even Laporta, plays really, really fast as a tight end. It just feels like they've combined the physical and the fast really, really well. And I think the way that they built it out was really, 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 really smart. So I think now with where they are, I think it's, that they've got some of these young skill guys at these core positions, these core skill positions. And you've got Zeitler as a free agent. I think you could look at them, kind of going back, kind of going the full circle here, start big, go fast. I think you can come back around and then go back to the line of scrimmage again. If they can't get Zeitler signed, I've mentioned Zabel for them as someone I think is plug and play. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State is another one who I think is plug and play. So those are kind of more, meat and potatoes guys, but they're in really good, they're in a really good spot.
Thank you.
As a reminder, make sure your line is muted until you're called on. Next question is from Aaron Wilson of KPRC in Houston. Aaron, you're up. Okay. We're going to move on to Andrew Mason of 104.3 in Denver.
Hey, DJ, wanted to ask you about mocking Colston Loveland to the Broncos at 20. Like, what do you like about him as a potential fit? And also, kind of a follow on that pick, you talked about how special Ashton Jeanty was. And if he's there at 20, do you see the Broncos passing on him even with his skill set?
Well, push comes to shove. First of all, I think I would just be shocked if Jeanty did get there. I was kind of playing around with a different scenario in that last mock draft. His tape is so good. The character's so good. All that stuff. Even if teams are going to be patient on the running backs, I think once we get through it and get to the end, I think, Jeanty will be off the board. That would be an interesting conversation with those guys there. Jeanty's my 3rd overall player. Loveland's my 7th overall player. So I think they both be, home run picks. I think you go Jeanty over Loveland just based off that for me in that situation. But Loveland, when I think about jokers and chess pieces and mismatched players, he'd be a fun one in that offense. And to grow, I like the idea of having the young quarterback and Bo Nix having a chance to grow and play with the same tight end for a long period of time. And I think there's, as we've seen with Mahomes and Kelsey, that's a chemistry thing with those two positions connected. So I would love to see them get a premium tight end like that and let those guys grow together, because Loveland is he's excellent. And again, he's one of the top 10 players in the draft for me.
Next question is from Jeff Fedotin of Forbes.
Daniel, thanks so much for doing this. I had a question about the Canadian quarterback who kind of wowed everybody at the Senior Bowl. Is he a guy that's going to get drafted? And if so, where is he more of like a priority free agent?
So everybody that I've talked to around the NFL, I still haven't got my hands on his tape yet. So that's been a tricky one, just to try and locate the tape. So I'm that's one of my things I'm efforting to do, is to find my way to that tape. But there was a lot of excitement just the way the ball came out of his hand, and it was still more of a late round, priority free agent situation. But he's got some size, and just in the brief exposure I had to him, watching him there, I think you have something to work with. So I'm anxious to see the tape. I'm anxious not just to see the tape to see him, but to see the style and the quality of play. Up there, I'm looking forward to seeing that. So I'm on the hunt.
Next question is from Anthony Cosenza of SB Nation.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for the time today. I have a question for you. As the Bengals are sitting in the middle of the first round, a lot of people are talking about Walter Nolan, if he's there for interior defensive line help. You mentioned earlier in the press conference call here that there's some good interior offensive line prospects later in the draft. Can the same be said about other interior defensive line prospects if the Bengals decide to forego those type of spots within the first 2 rounds, and they maybe wait till late night 2, early day 3?
Yeah, I'm going to pull up their pick here. So if we just want to go to pick 81 for Cincinnati and you want a defensive tackle with pick 81, I mean, this is the draft to do it. There is a ton of them. So, you know, you've got Jamari Caldwell from Oregon kind of in that range. You've got Ty Hamilton, Ohio State. You've got Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, Jordan Phillips from Maryland. There's a lot of defensive tackles. I posted this the other day, but in terms of guys with potential starter grades, so I'm not saying, you know, they're locks, you know, stamp it, they're going to be starters, but with players with the potential to start at defensive tackle. Last year I had 12, and this year I had double. So it is as deep of a defensive tackle draft as I can ever remember. So if they do decide to go another direction early, they're going to have plenty of options beyond that. If you're looking one, by the way, that I'm one of my just favorite players to study is Pegues from Ole Miss, who's 323 pounds. I have him kind of as a second round, like bottom part of the second round. But just if you want to have fun, just pull up like a YouTube. I'm sure they're out there on him and look at his stuff he does offensively at Ole Miss. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Next question is from John McMullen of On SI.
Hey, DJ. Thanks for doing this. Last time the Eagles were at 32 was the Lamar draft. Is there a quarterback that you think might fit there for teams looking for that fifth-year option? And then when they traded down, they drafted Dallas Goedert. And Zach Ertz is was a little bit younger than Dallas is now. Any tight ends in sort of that 40 to 50 range that could project?
Yeah, there's definitely tight ends. The three that I would have in that mix, Mason Taylor from LSU would be a home run pick, who's just a real steady, reliable, dependable guy who jumped on the scene with the game winner against Bama his freshman year. He's obviously, it's a football family with Jason Taylor there, but he's an impressive kid who had a great Senior Bowl. So I don't know how far into the second round he would make it, but he's in that range. Elijah Arroyo from Miami, another one who had a great Senior Bowl week, who can really, really run. And then Harold Fannin, who I mentioned a little bit earlier from Bowling Green. I think those would all be good guys to add along into that group. But I do think Dallas Goedert's got a lot more. He's got a lot more football left in him. In terms of the quarterbacks, I haven't been able to find that buzz out there for someone who would, a quarterback that teams would really want to get into the bottom of one. Jaxson Dart is my third guy. That would be the one I think I would keep an eye on and see if the buzz builds with him, that maybe that buzz could build. But as of today, I would say I don't necessarily see a team moving in there.
Thanks, DJ.
Yep.
Next, we'll go to Philip Marsh with Huddle UK.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for your time today. The interest in the NFL over here in the UK is growing at a huge rate, and particularly the off-season interest now is growing with each passing year. With a focus on the combine next week, what drills for specific positions would you advise a first-time combine watcher really pay attention to? And are there any sort of non-measurables when you're scouting these prospects that you really pay attention to instead of the numbers?
Well, that's great. I'm glad there's more interest building here with this event. It's a lot of fun to watch. I would say, first of all, if you're watching it for the first time, the most fun part of the combine is I would think on the fan side of things is you want to watch guys run fast. So, the receivers and the DBs, when they get a chance to run 40s, it's just me and Rich Eisen have a blast because we got the best seat in the house, and it's just still fun to watch guys that can absolutely fly. That's something to watch there. Quarterback wise, you just want to see how the ball comes out of their hand. You're not going to necessarily worry about, all the ball placement things and, ding them on accuracy, throwing to guys they're not used to, but you can get a sense for just how they spin the ball, how the ball comes out of their hand. I think when you look at explosive positions in terms of like edge rushers, I always think it's important to see their jumps, like see their vertical, see their broad, just see how much explosiveness they can generate. those are some of the things you look at there. In terms of outside the numbers, look, the team's going to get access to stuff we don't, obviously the medical information and the interviews that they have in the evenings. But I always think there's value in if you're watching these groups and you see, who ends up kind of being the leaders in these groups, who do players navigate towards, who do they want to be around and talk to. I think there's information you can gather just by watching these guys interact.
Thank you very much.
Next question is from Jonas Schaefer of the Baltimore Banner.
Hey, DJ, thanks for doing this. It's been interesting to see some of the best passing offenses in the NFL don't really have that prototypical X receiver. And obviously we've seen teams like Buffalo embrace someone like a Mac Hollins because of what he can do as a field stretcher, but also with his blocking ability. I guess, as that position has kind of evolved, have the traits that teams are looking for at that X position changed at all, just with the evolution of the game?
That's an interesting question. I haven't really thought about it. I still think the core principles are the same in terms of, size, physicality, the ability to win on third down and in the red zone, catch radius. I think a lot of those things have been the same for a long period of time. The blocking thing's interesting. I've been talking about this a little bit on the defensive side of it, because with corners, we used to say, when I started scouting in 2003, we would use the term cover corner a lot. And, hey, this guy doesn't really tackle, doesn't have any interest, but who cares? Like, we're going to leave him out there on the island and let him cover. And I think we're seeing so many condensed formations now that it's become imperative that you can tackle as a corner, because they're going to put you in run fits. They're going to leave you alone, block everybody else, and make you be the force player. But it's also done as it's created a need and a desire to have wide receivers that can do what the Rams have done, which is get guys who can dig out linebackers and who can be physical presence in the run game there as well from those tight splits. So, I think all that stuff kind of, factors into a little bit of evolution and a little bit of change there. But I still think when I think of an X, I still think third down red zone. I'd like to have somebody who can win one-on-one out there.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Mike Payton, A to Z Sports in Detroit.
Thanks, Daniel. This is great. I'm curious about, the Lions are looking for somebody that generally is like a Swiss Army knife, has a lot of positional versatility, can do a lot of different things. Who do you see in this draft, whether it's on offense or defense, that really sticks out kind of later in the draft, second round beyond that just can do a bunch of different things?
Well, defensively, I mentioned Pegues of all the different things he can do. He's someone who on the defensive side of the ball is a defensive tackle who every now and then will kick out and just be a big, massive edge rusher. But then on offense, he's a wildcat quarterback. He's an H-back. He's a wing. He runs the ball. That's one of the more fun, versatile pieces in this year's draft. When I look at, a weapon offensively, if you're going to go down the line in the draft, I think there's a fun one in Woody Marks out of USC as someone who can really catch the ball out of the backfield. He's got a ton of production going back to Mississippi State. He's someone that I think can be a little bit of a mismatch player there with what he can do. So a couple different things for him. I'm trying to think of other tight ends maybe that could do some other things. One of the guys that I'm so fascinated about in the draft, he's not going to the combine, which I was bummed about. But Willie Lampkin from North Carolina, he's a wrestler. He's 5'10 and a half, 275 pound center, who you just look at him on paper and then you maybe go out there and watch him warm up and you're like, there's no way this guy can physically hold up. But he does. He just plays with leverage and strength and power. He's a good football player. Did not get invited to the combine. I was bummed because I wanted to see him work out as a tight end. I wouldn't mind seeing him work out as a defensive tackle. I wouldn't mind seeing him work out as a fullback. I do the Charger games. I've seen Scott Matlock, was a D lineman who's converted to fullback. I've seen Ricard with the Ravens. So Willie Lampkin to me is that's a fun toy to play with. I don't know exactly what his role is going to be at the next level, but he's a fun player.
Thanks, Daniel. I actually missed the name of the first guy you said. If you could say that one back.
Oh gosh, wasn't Woody Marks, was it?
No, it was the defense guy who could.
Oh yeah, JJ Pegues from Ole Miss. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Next question is from Chris Bumbaka of USA Today.
What's up, Daniel? Thanks for doing this. Hope you're doing well. Cam Scatabo is obviously a guy who had a big coming out party in the college football playoff and had a great season. But what does he need to do over, at the combine and maybe at his pro day, depending on if he works out, to keep rising up draft boards, in your opinion?
Well, he's a unique player. Like, just when you watch him, obviously the incredible run that he went on, but I was looking at my notes on him when I was putting this stuff in last night from my notebook, and I said, this guy, he just chooses violence. Like, I don't know if I've ever seen a more aggressive runner who just seeks out contact and who can absorb contact. When I was looking for a comp for him, my first thought was, okay, he's like kind of like a shrunk down James Conner. And I was like, gosh, more than anything else, he just reminds me of a Plinko chip from The Price is Right, of just like bouncing off everything and everybody. But the thing with him is, we know he can catch it. We know, obviously, the vision, the balance, the toughness. The only question is, it's going to be the top speed. So, if he has a chance, I think to me, he looked like he'd probably be a low 4.6 guy. If he would run in the 4.5s, that would be great. That would really help himself out. But she is such a fun player to watch, and whoever gets him is going to have one of the most aggressive and physical runners that we've seen in the last few years. So he's a fun one.
Next question is from Dave Naylor of TSN.
Hi, Daniel. A couple of Canadian players in attendance at the Combine. I know Kurtis Rourke's not going to work out, but I understand he'll be there. And Alec Aymanar from the receiver from Stanford. If you could kind of give us your take on both those players at this point, and obviously understanding that Rourke's comes with the injury.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, I mean, the first time I noticed Stanford receiver when I'm watching Colorado last year, and I'm going, holy moly, he had a monster game there. That was when he kind of jumped on my scene a little bit. And he had 290 plus yards in that game. A good bit of it on Travis Hunter, I might add. So he was that's when he jumped on my radar. But outside, big time burst in his release. I thought he was better on the move, like keep him on the go. He's a little bit sticky at the top of routes, working back downhill. But I thought he's someone who runs through the ball, which I like to see. I've talked about that a little bit, being kind of grounded through the catch. The issue with him is just kind of contact drops. Like, you just want to see when he gets kind of those combat catch opportunities, just being a little stronger and finishing on those. But I think he's going to run really well. He's got excellent size, so I'm excited to see him once we get to Indianapolis. And then with Rourke, I mean, gosh. And I guess that's not a surprise in Canada with the hockey nation, the toughness and all that stuff. Like, this dude playing the whole season with a torn ACL is pretty incredible. A little bit older at 24 years old, but someone who's good in the RPO game. He's got a good pocket feel. He's quick through progressions. I like the fact he's got a nice, like, quiet delivery. He's not real, violent or aggressive as a thrower. He's just very poised. The question is going to be, how much real pop does he have? How much arm strength does he have there? But I love the size. Obviously the toughness speaks for itself.
Where do you see Alec playing in the NFL? Where do you see him lining up?
Well, I think he'll be outside. I think he'll be an X receiver. I think that's where he's best suited.
Thank you.
Yep.
Next question is from Jared Feinberg of Panthers Wire.
Hey, Daniel. So you had Jalen Walker as one of your top 10 prospects on your big board going into next week's combine. Do you believe he should be more of a pure edge rusher, or does he fit more of what Andrew Van Ginkel and Frankie Louvu does play style wise?
Those are interesting comps. I think he can play in that role. I think you can do so many different things. And I think some teams are going to say, why I'm not going to just put him in one spot. I'm going to let him do a bunch of different things, as those teams do with those guys. So that's real. I think that's a possibility. I just would love to see, given the opportunity to just be a full-time rusher off the edge. I know he's not 6'5", ideal frame out there. I think he's going to be a nightmare to block if you just cut him loose and let him rush like that. So that's what I would do. Everything's going to be dependent on what scheme you're in and who your defensive coordinator is. But I think this guy's double-digit sacks off the edge, and I don't think his lack of that ideal size is an issue at all against the run. He's so strong and stout. I think he'd be hell on wheels out there. So that's what I would do with him. But again, if you have a defense that wants to deploy guys differently, I don't know that there's a whole lot he can't do.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yep.
Next question is from Rishi Sharma of TD Labs.
Hey there, Daniel. Thanks so much for taking my question. I'm a small content creator for Canada, trying to get draft news to more Canadians. I got a two-parter here. Really, the first one is I've done some research and I haven't seen I've seen Tyler Warren ranked top 5 and Loveland ranked top 7 in your top 100. Haven't seen tight ends since probably Bowers in 2024 and Pitts from 2021 ranked that high. What do you say about Tyler Warren? That's his X factor, and is Rob Gronkowski a little bit of a far off player comp in terms of what he can be if he's to hit his ceiling? And the second part is here, this is a Dallas Cowboys focus question. You have Jeanty, a mock to the Cowboys, and now my concern is the amount of touches. Is this something you look at when you look at your evaluations? He has around 750, and someone like Gibbs is coming into the league with 400. I'm a little bit concerned with drafting a back like that after I've seen what happened to Ezekiel Elliott after a couple of years of being in the NFL.
Sure. Good questions. I'll start with the tight end stuff here. Look, this draft at the very, very top, I mean, yeah, I've got Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter up there, but it's not a draft where you have, 10, like I had a higher grade on Brock Bowers is what I'll just cut to the chase there than I did on these tight ends. I really like both of them, though. We don't have quite the same top end depth that we've had in years past. But Tyler Warren is my 5th overall player because his mixture of just size, physicality, he just walls guys off. He looks like a billboard rolling down the seam. He's enormous. He's got a huge catch radius. He is so physical and tough with the ball in his hands after the catch. They use him, on the Wildcat stuff and use him as a runner and do those different things because he's a really hard guy to get on the ground. I look at tight ends and you kind of look at the Gronk tree and the Kelsey tree. Like if you're stylistically the difference between those two guys, I think it's well represented in this draft where you've got Tyler Warren, who represents more of the Gronk type, who's going to be better on the move, crossers, seams, get the ball in his hands, make people tackle him. Whereas when you look at Loveland, it's a little more Kelsey. It's a little more, option routes, getting in and out of breaks, a little more fluid, and someone who can make you miss after the catch, but not quite as physical a player there as you have there with Tyler Warren. So those are the two tight ends that I think are, 2 of the top 7 players in this year's draft class. With the Cowboys and Jeanty, yeah, I mean, look, workload it's something that you look at, but I mean, I don't know. I know Ezekiel Elliott didn't, on the second contract did not get the Cowboys what they wanted, but that's a heck of a run. I don't know how many teams would be disappointed with that type of impact if they were to get out of a draft pick, to have that type of elite player, even if it's for a handful of years, I think would constitute a great pick.
Thanks so much, Daniel.
Yep.
Next question is from Eric Smith of Chargers.com.
Hi, DJ. Thanks as always for doing this. With the Chargers at pick 22, how would you prioritize their needs heading into year 2 with Jim Harbaugh and Joe Ortiz?
Thanks, man. Look, I look at the interior of the offensive line would be the top for me. And that's going to be, something you can address with free agency and the draft. And I think getting more weapons offensively, getting ideally you get a big time tight end to go along with some juice in the backfield at running back, someone that you can find with some real burst, and then someone to add to the receiver room who's got some explosiveness. So, I referenced the Lions a little bit earlier, Eric, about doing the big things first and then going getting the speed and the explosiveness. I still think there's a little work to be done on the big side. And they've got defensive tackle situation with free agency. I'd love to see him bring back Puna Ford there, but this draft is matched up pretty well with their needs. And interior defensive line, interior offensive line, tight end, running back. I think those are all areas that can be addressed through free agency and through the draft. And I think where they're picking, there's a chance you could be looking at Loveland, which would be a great pick there. I love Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. If you want to go with the running back, I think that's a great pick there. Someone who could give them some burst as well as the physicality, all kind of wrapped up in one. So there's your tight end, there's your running back, and then interior offensive line. I don't think Booker gets there. That would be a run the card up for me because I just think, man, you continue to invest in that interior offensive line. He'd be a really good fit there with his size, physicality, character, intelligence, all that stuff. He's someone who checks every box. So I think they're gonna have a really, really good player there for him in one of those spots, and I think that's up to them to figure out how in free agency to support and complement what they're going to do.
Next question is from Blaine Grisick of Turf Show Times.
Hey, Daniel, thanks for doing this. Just kind of looking at the back half of the first round, it kind of seems like that the area 20 to 40 is a bit of a dead zone or purgatory a little bit. Do you see, and there's going to be a lot of teams maybe trying to trade back, do you see enough teams trying to trade up where you can get out of that range? And then just kind of looking at Jahdae Barron, I know you had him ranked pretty highly. Do you think he kind of gets maybe the Cooper DeJean treatment where teams see him as a nickel and we're sitting here a year from now saying how did he fall to like 40 or something like that?
Yeah, I've had this conversation with the team about this very subject because, and I will say I'm higher on Barron than just about every team I've talked to. I love the way that he plays. I just do, and I think that this is what I've said to teams. I'm like, look, you guys blew it on Branch. You guys let Branch fall to the second round. The league collectively blew it on Cooper DeJean. Let him fall to the second round. Is this going to happen again? Like, are we going to let Barron fall because we're not going to give credit to someone who's going to be on the field the whole game as someone who's going to be a nickel or going to play, in that different roles he can play. He can be your dime linebacker, be your nickel. I think he could survive outside if you needed him to. That's not going to be where his specialty is, but somebody that's a sure tackler, that has instincts, that takes the football away, that's an outstanding blitzer. And I look at the teams that are, in the playoffs and guys that can fill that role, can play that role for teams. I saw it, I see it with Derwin James as someone who can play in that spot. You look at obviously Cooper DeJean coming off of the Super Bowl there. The Chiefs with McDuffie had someone that, he was outside, but he can be a difference maker in that role and has been in the past. The Ravens, obviously when you have the size and physicality they have that they can put down in there in that spot, I think there's value to it. I think he's a great player. I don't necessarily understand the lack of value there for him around the league, but I guess we'll have to see what shakes out there. And then what was the other one about the options of being able to trade back? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just like that 20 to 40 range kind of seems like a bit of a purgatory. Like, are there going to be enough teams that maybe want to trade up in that range where teams can have the option to trade back?
The one thing I would keep an eye on is if you have some teams with tackle needs, depending on what happens with the Ravens, with Ronnie Stanley, they could be one that could potentially move up. The Chiefs, depending on where their comfort level is with their roster, left tackle could be an area they could address. So I try and look at maybe shallow pools and where there would be a need to move up. I would say keep an eye on the offensive tackle market, and maybe that could drive some movement.
Next question is from River Wells of Bucks Game Day.
Hey there, Daniel. Thanks for doing this. The Buccaneers have a lot of different needs. A lot of them are on defense at a lot of different levels, and Todd Bowles likes to run cover three, a lot of different blitzes and different fronts and looks. When you look at some of these defensive players and kind of where the Bucs are going to draft at around 19, what do you think are some of the best fits for this sort of Todd Bowles defense?
Well, aggressive guys that can blitz from anywhere. Jihad Campbell would be sure as heck fun to watch there. just with all the different things he can do, and fast and explosive and smart. That's a good combination for him, for Coach Bowles to be able to play with there. So that's the first name that just jumped off the top of my head here when I'm thinking about those types of players. Williams from Georgia would be another one. You can do a lot of different things with him in terms of rushing him inside, rushing him outside. He's athletic enough if you want to drop him. He can do a lot of those things as well. So those are a couple names to me that just kind of jump out as pretty dynamic players that are, I love it when you have pass rushers that can win from different entry points. And I think those guys can both win from a variety of entry points.
Thank you. Next question is from Richard Silva of Detroit News.
Hey, Daniel, appreciate your time. I think the popular thought, probably with the Lions at 28, is edge rusher. But if they do pass up on that, who are some guys in range at 60 that you think could be available?
Yeah, 60 for edge rushers. I kind of mentioned it. Umanmielen from Ole Miss is right in that range. I'm not quite as high on Nick Scorton as some other people are, so that's his range for me. And again, I like him. He's a good player. I just know a lot of people talk about him as a first round pick, and he very well could be, but he's in that range for me. You've got, Kyle Kennard, you've got Tui Molau from Ohio State. It's a good group. There's a lot of options there, and still you can get guys that can come in and start. I've talked about this D tackle, how deep it is. The edge group's pretty deep as well.
Next question is from Darian Hopkins of the Las Vegas Raiders Talk.
How you doing, DJ? How you doing today, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for hopping on.
Appreciate it. Quick question. I know there's a lot of uncertainty with the quarterback position for the Las Vegas Raiders. It has been a lot of rumors of the Raiders moving up to get a top quarterback. Now, if they don't decide to get a trade up to get the top quarterback, what would be the option at number 6 for the Las Vegas Raiders, and what position would be the best fit for that number 6 overall pick?
Yeah, they could go in several different directions. You look at some of their needs. Obviously the quarterback stands out, but corner is an area depending on how comfortable they are with Will Johnson. I'm a Barron fan, but I haven't talked to teams that would be as comfortable all the way up there at that point in time. Might be a little early. So that's one area you could look. I think they could just go though, kind of best available defensive player. I don't think you can go wrong there. Walker is a fun one. We've talked a ton about him from Georgia. I know Tom Brady is going to know everything ins and outs about Mason Graham. Christian Wilkins and Mason Graham would be kind of a fun pairing with Max on the outside. So there's different directions, different areas they could go there, but they've got to figure out the quarterback thing at some point in time via free agency, or whether they're going to do it right here at 6, or whether they want to try and take a flyer on somebody outside the top of the draft. So I do have my did have my antenna up, because I have to go back and double check, but I was trying to remember what Chip Kelly's connection was with Dillon Gabriel, maybe as a down the line option for them at quarterback, but I'm pretty sure they're familiar with each other.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Next question is from Casey Kinnaman of Orange and Brown Report.
By all indications, the Browns are going to lean back into Kevin Stefanski's wheelhouse with the wide zone scheme and play action from under center elements. This is a terrific running back class. Which running backs you see as the best fit for the wide zone, and kind of give me some of the characteristics of each one?
Sure. Yeah, there's again, I mentioned the depth of this running back class. The first one that just popped right into my head is Caleb Johnson from Iowa. Someone who I just think he's that one cut, foot in the ground, speed and go. He's got excellent vision. He's not going to be a real, like nifty in and out guy. He's just going to see it and go. And he's got burst, and he's got long speed. So that would be the first one that kind of popped into my mind. Other ones, Hampton obviously would fit into that as a big explosive guy. I think he's a little more loose than Johnson, but that would fit there as well. There's Dylan Sampson, not the biggest guy in the world, a little bit undersized out of Tennessee, but he's again, he can get to the perimeter, get north and south and go. He's got big time burst. I don't think he's going to time as fast as he plays, but he plays plenty fast. Those are some guys that kind of jump out to me. But I mean, the two Ohio State guys can play in any scheme with Judkins and Henderson. And with those two individually, Judkins is he's a finisher. Like, you watch the end of the Penn State game, he's their 4-minute back and he just salts the game away. He's got balance, strength, power, passing game wise, more screens, check down type. Whereas Henderson is one of the best pass protecting backs that I've evaluated. He is exceptional in that regard. And then he can run routes, he can pluck it, and he can hit home runs out of the backfield. He's not quite as good of a dirty runner inside as Judkins is, but definitely a home run hitter who in that system, again, stretch and then get up the field and use your speed and then be a factor in the passing game. Travion Henderson is outstanding. So, I mean, I go on. There's a bunch of backs, third round type, probably third, fourth round for someone like Trevor Etienne is another one that I like. So, again, it's a long list.
All right, thanks, DJ.
Yep.
Next question is from Zach Goodall of Swamp 247.
Hey, Daniel, I'm curious for your impressions of Florida's draft class. They're sending 9 guys to the combine after 2 last year. Obviously don't need to get into each one, but maybe some of the standouts to you, and in particular, Graham Mertz with the quarterback class, and if the play that he put together at Florida after a little bit up and down at Wisconsin changed his trajectory at all.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with Mertz. To me, I had him more of as a, late round priority free agent. He is a little bit older, which a lot of these guys are. He's 24. But I like the way he threw the ball on the move. I thought he held the ball a little bit long. I thought he got a little bit jumpy at times in the pocket, and I just thought there were times where I just like to see him just throw a little more trajectory. He just kind of threw a flat ball. But by all accounts, talking to the folks there about, he's a great dude. He's really, really bright. So if he can kind of just pass the threshold, as a thrower, I think he's got a chance to, an opportunity maybe as a practice squad or hang on to a roster as a backup. But to me, he was more kind of a late round guy or free agent. With some of these other Florida guys, Cameron Jackson is enormous. It's kind of unique to see a D tackle at 6'6.5", 340 pounds. He more of a flash player than someone who's real consistent. I thought he played on his heels a little bit much, but he can stack blocks. He's got real strong hands, and I thought he played with good block awareness. So anyways, interesting package with him with his size. And then I'll just give you a couple more here. Badger, the receiver. I like that he's inside, outside. He's instinctive, settles in zones. He can win with quicks against press. He tracks the ball easy. I thought his frame, he caught the ball and played bigger than his size. So I thought he was, 4th round type player. And then give you one more here just with Shamar James, a linebacker. First tape you watch is against Miami. Has a nice play against Cam Ward to pick one off there. You can use him in a variety of ways. You can spy him. He's got range at the perimeter. He can carry, he can cover down the seam. I just thought, physicality-wise, he got stuck on some blocks and got swallowed a little bit inside. So a little bit more of a day 3 guy for me, but someone who's got a chance.
Next question is from Patrick Brown of 247 Sports.
Hey, Daniel, I wanted to ask you about a couple of Tennessee guys. You already touched on Sampson, so if we could circle back to James Pierce Jr. Something you mentioned earlier was that there's a pretty wide range to where he could go. He obviously going into the season was projected near maybe the top of the draft. So what did you think? How did you sort of evaluate his play this season? And thank you for doing this.
Sure. Yeah, teams are just kind of split on him. Just kind of get stuff all over the map. He is a kind of a unique player because of his frame and his build. But gosh, when I watch him, he's just really, really explosive. Again, I mentioned those first 3 steps. Those are the ones that jump out to me. He reminds me, gosh, I have all these draft names in my head, so the current guys end up escaping me. But Leonard Floyd, tall, long, rangy edge rusher. That's kind of who he reminds me of as a player. So he's a good one. Omar or Norman Lott, the DT. He plays with power through edges. He's kind of funky in that he's got a unique rush as someone in there he'll use a Euro step at times. He can cross your face. I didn't think he was ultra dynamic, but he just got a lot of ways to kind of win in there. I gave him, what was a 3rd round grade. Elijah Simmons, the other DT, is 340 pounds, just massive. Can sit there and plug and hold the point of attack easy, holds up doubles. Not much of a pass rusher, more just push the pocket. I'll just rip through these last two. Brew McCoy, seen him since high school at Mater Dei, and at USC. Just durability is the knock there, but he's big, he's physical, he's gonna look great. Just watching him move around in warmups, can track the ball. He's physical after the catch. Just durability and staying healthy is the issue there. And then Thornton, size, speed. He caught a zillion of those bang eights, those skinny posts in that offense with that real wide split. He tracks the ball well. I just thought as a route runner, he telegraphed a little bit, and just like to see a little bit more precision there, a little more intention there as a route runner. And I didn't know after the catch if there was much wiggle, just kind of more of a run away from you guy.
Appreciate it.
Yep.
Next question is Destin Adams on A to Z Sports in Indianapolis.
Hi, Daniel. Thanks for taking the time today.
No problem.
So for the Colts, they have some clear needs in the secondary with some younger pieces in the mold, and then making the defensive philosophy switch with Lou Anarumo coming over as the coordinator. What are your thoughts, I guess, on the day 1 and day 2 prospects at corner and at safety, especially in terms of being able to play in like the deep safety role?
Sure. Deep safety role. I mean, Starks fits that out of Georgia. He's someone that can play in the nickel, can play high as the safety. So that one would be the first one I would talk about as someone who can range and play over the top. Xavier Watts is another one from Notre Dame who fits in there. One of my favorite guys in the safety group who's going to, 3rd, 4th round, maybe you get him in the 4th round, is Craig Whitson from Cal. He plays in the deep half. He can play downhill. He can open. He's a smooth mover. He's got speed. He's a firm tackler, and he's really smart. And talking to the folks at Cal, they rave about his intelligence and leadership. So he's someone I'm big on trust in the back end, and I think he's someone you get in the 3rd, 4th round that I would trust putting back there real early in his career. Corner-wise, for a little more of the depth guys, talked about Trey Amos is one of my favorites out of Ole Miss. Parrish, Kansas State. In terms of like having some tools, some raw tools to work with, but you got to be a little bit patient. Darian Porter from Iowa State, height, weight, speed. He can play the ball down the field. He just is a little bit tight, but you've got some things to work with there. Another Cal kid, Noel Williams, who's got a ton of production, and I think he's ready to play right away. You can watch the Auburn game with him. He had 3 picks in that game. Picked off Cam Ward, a pick 6 against Cam Ward in that game. Real feisty, physical, maybe a little quicker than fast. We'll see what he runs, but he's another one kind of in that 3rd, 4th round range. So there's some interesting names there that I think would fit what they're doing.
Next question is Mookie Alexander from SB Nation.
Hi there, Daniel. Thank you for this really enlightening conference call. The big story up here in the Pacific Northwest regarding the Seattle Seahawks is whether or not they extend Geno Smith and keep him as a starter in 2025. But even if he does stay, there is the possibility that Seattle could actually draft a quarterback this year, which is something they've only done twice ever under John Schneider. There are a lot of options seemingly in the late day 1, day 2, even day 3 range. And the most common names I've seen mock drafted to Seattle are Will Howard of Ohio State, Callum McCord of Syracuse, Quinn Ewers of Texas, and Jaxson Dart of Ole Miss, whom I believe you had suggested could even be an option for Seattle at number 18. So with the expectation of a run-oriented, play-action-based, more under-center offense under Clint Kubiak, which of those quarterbacks do you believe best fits the new Seattle offense?
Yeah, appreciate that. Look, the coffee would probably be a little bit rich for me at 18 for Jaxson Dart. I have him in the 40s, but he's my third quarterback there. And I just kind of rip through some of these guys and tell you about them, and then I'll just kind of wrap it up with who I think could make some sense for what they're doing. But Will Howard had the hot playoff run. He's got obviously the size, almost 6'4", 240 pounds, ultra competitive kid. I love the fact that he won at 2 spots at K-State and then obviously this year at Ohio State. He's a touch thrower. He's quick to get to number 3 in his read. The big question is just going to be the arm strength. I had a couple brain cramps during the year, but I thought he cleaned all that stuff up. Everybody's going to look at the Oregon game, the first meeting, with running the clock out there at the end of that ball game, and some turnovers against Penn State. But I thought he got better and throughout the year. I just want to see him throw live. I've never seen him throw live. I want to see what his arm looks like. Tyler Shuck from Louisville is older. He's 25. He's got 4 degrees, so he's probably going to be as well educated as anybody on your football team. I can't imagine anybody having more than that. He can drive the ball. He's big and strong. He's another one who can get to number 3 in the progression. He can throw off balance. He's got a lot of arm talent. There's a lot to like there. One of the things with him is just pocket awareness stuff. He bails too much instead of just sliding, shuffling, and finding space within the pocket. But he's a big, strong dude. Ewers, there's a few guys that are on my list to go back after the combine, after I get some time, after watching all these guys, and go back to 23 tape because, look, I know he wasn't healthy this year, but he did not take the step I was hoping he would take. He is still young at 21. He's got quick feet, quick release, but he got into a lot of bad habits. I didn't think he played with any conviction, just not trusting what he's seeing, got real sloppy with his feet, and everything kind of got away from him. So the team had tremendous success, and he obviously made some big time throws in the playoffs, but overall, not the step forward I was hoping for him. And then last one I think you mentioned was Kyle McCord from Syracuse.
Mm-hmm.
Reminded me a lot of Derek Carr at Fresno. Quick feet, quick eyes. You see some RPO stuff there. He's accurate. He's got a touch down the field. He can gas it up and give you some velocity when needed. Just played real aggressive and was a little bit frenetic at times, and also ran himself into some sacks. So all those guys have, different strengths and weaknesses. I think they're all intriguing type players. To me, they're more ideally you'd love to get them in the 3rd round. I think Dart will be gone by then, but I think the rest of these guys, that's more the range that I have them. But in terms of someone you'd want to work with, gosh, it sounds weird even though he's older, but for what they're doing, I mean, Tyler Shuck to me would be someone I would be interested in maybe taking a flyer on there in the 3rd round.
Very interesting. That was actually going to be my other question. What do you think of Tyler Shuck? But you're a mind reader too, in addition to being a great. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
Next question is from Brandon Kritzel of Gorilla Sports.
Hey, DJ. First time, long time. With so much talk about Shedeur and Travis Hunter, I was curious what you thought of the other prospects from CU, specifically all the wideouts. Obviously, a couple more will be at the combine, and then I don't think Will Shepherd will be. And then separately, what do you think of the 2 Jayhawks, Devin Neal and the Hawk Mamba, Kobe Bryant?
Well, there you go. All right, cool. I'll start. Good to hear your voice, by the way. I'll go Colorado. I mean, I think we've, Travis Hunter is like someone went to the Philadelphia Eagles and took Devontae Smith and Darius Slay and just like spun them around in a circle, and they came out as the same human being. He's unique, but Wester is, for someone who's just over 5'9", 177 pounds, not real big, but ultra dynamic, explosive. I like the fact he had 21 explosives and only 3 drops. He's sudden, getting in and out of breaks. Just going to have to play him in space. That's where his game is. And I thought he was, kind of in that 4th round range. Jimmy Horn's a little bit, in that same vein. I like Wester a little bit more, but Horn, a lot of quick hitters. He's tough and strong through contact. He can, he can really see things, feel things instinctive wise. I didn't think he was quite as elusive after the catch there. But someone who's definitely kind of an interesting down the line player. You didn't ask me about the Colorado State guys, by the way. There, I feel like that's not serving your market properly. When you have someone that like Torrey Horton, who's a really, really good player. I'm just busting your chops.
Feel free to chime in on Torrey Horton too. Obviously, he was banged up a little bit.
No, I know. He's one of my favorites. I have had a chance to go back and watch him in 23. But inside, outside, smooth mover. He can separate. He can change direction. He's got a big catch radius. Knows how to play. Knows how to work back. I think you're going to see him climb through the spring. You're going to start hearing a lot more about him as he's healthy in the spring, and you'll start seeing some buzz building on him. Let's get to your Jayhawks. I'm a Logan Brown fan. Plays their right tackle. He's got quick feet. Plays a little bit high. But I just like the fact that you got somebody that can work up to the second level, swallows linebackers. He's got a little nasty edge to him when he's free. He looks for work. So like that about him. Just overextends a little bit at times, something to work on. But I liked him to the tune of like third, fourth round. Kobe Bryant, you mentioned it. The ball production's excellent. He's lean. He's 171 pounds. I don't love that, but he can take the ball away. That the Houston game will show you that. Just watch him in cover 3, just drive and pull it away. He can find the ball with his back to the quarterback, which is very hard to do. He's got really quick feet. And for someone who's not big and who's light like that, although it's always kind of a low tackler, but he's got a decent batting average as a tackler. So he's, again, someone I think if he was a little bit bigger, we'd be talking about him probably more in that second round range, but I think he's probably 3-4 is where we see him go. Oh, you want me to? I'm just looking through another couple more. Let me give you 2 more, by the way. Dotson had the 5 picks at the other corner. Zone eyes, sees it well, drives through the receiver to the ball. Just got out muscled a little bit times. He's day 3 guy for me. Devin Neal, short stepper. He can make you miss. The production's excellent. Looks to get vertical as fast as possible. I thought he was a little bit quicker than fast. I'm anxious to see what he runs, but someone who's definitely a valuable option as a check down back and someone who's an efficient runner at 220 pounds.
Thanks, DJ. I'll see you in Indy if you make it.
All right, see you, bud.
Next question is from Matt Ryan of BaltimoreRavens.com.
Hey, Daniel, I appreciate you taking the time. I'm just curious with the defensive line depth in this class and, the top end talent that they have, do you think that teams could kind of wait until later rounds just because of, how many starter level players there are?
Yeah, I think there's a couple positions in this draft where that's going to be the discussion. When you look at, if you are dead set on getting a defensive tackle, edge rusher, running back, tight end, I think that you have to look at the combination. And this is, what you do in the draft room is you take the combination of players. Okay, if we take the running back in the first round and we take the tackle in the second round, what does that combination look like versus flipping it? We get the tackle first, we come back and get the running back, edge rusher, whatever position later. I just think those are some positions of real depth. So, if that's a need for you along the defensive line, running back, tight end, I think you might look at going another position early, knowing you can circle back and still get a really talented player, not just in this year, but historically, like day 2 guys. Whereas I don't know that the top 15 of this draft marries up with some of the better top 15s we've seen over the last decade. But I do think the day 2 mix, I think it's very similar. So I think there's quality to be had there.
Next question, Ray Fittipaldo from Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Hope I didn't butcher that name.
You did not. Thank you. Daniel, there was a discussion a couple of years ago about the value of taking a guy like Jordan Davis in the middle of the first round, a 2-down player. He's been that for the Eagles. So same question a couple of years later, but if you could spin that towards the Steelers, would there be value there taking a guy like Kenneth Grant who could help your run defense? Or would you rather see them at 21 go after a guy with more 3-down versatility, pick your guy, Harmon, whoever that might be?
Yeah. I think Kenneth has that upside in him. He's going to be 340 pounds and he's going to run under 5 flat. You're just going to see an athlete that's a freak. He just hasn't, he's not a polished rusher yet. So I think that's all in front of him. And I think in the meantime, he's someone who is going to dominate against the run. He's going to eat blocks. And, you know, as a league that's gone, you know, to so much shell coverage and become so obsessed with taking away explosives, well, you do that, you got to play with light boxes. And so I do think that talking to people around the league and just, you know, following a team around the league and speaking to people every week, there's more value in these guys now. It's kind of everything's kind of come around a little bit where it was, man, if you can't really rush the passer, I'm not going to expend high resources on you as a defensive lineman, a defensive tackle. And now it's like, you know what? We're trying to take away explosive plays. We're a little light in the box. Having someone that can dominate against the run and let us play our coverage over the top is huge. And I think he's got more as a rusher. I have this vision in my head, and this is probably a sign that I haven't been sleeping much. But I just remember going back to Albert Hainsworth when he was with Tennessee playing with Vanden Bosch. I'm not comparing him in terms of, you know, people, work ethic, all that stuff. I'm just saying a big jumbo athlete like that you could kick out at end, and then they would put Vanden Bosch inside and they could run games and do all those things with them. Like I think Kenneth Grant, he's got the ability and the tools to do some unique stuff. And he has not come close to scratching the surface of his potential. So I would have no problem whatsoever if the Steelers made that pick, and I'd be pretty pumped up about it if I were a Steeler fan.
Thank you.
Next question is from Jessa Nance of Tide 100.9.
Hey, Daniel, I have a question about Alabama players, Jahad Campbell and Tyler Booker. I know you've spoken on them a bit, but my question is, so for Jahad, you have him, if he's still around, why would it be a great idea to take him at that 29th spot? And if Tyler Booker is able to go to Chicago, how could he be beneficial to that Chicago team? And then additionally, what does Jalen Milroe need to do in the combine and on pro day to at least get back into the second round?
Cool. I will go those one at a time here. So with Campbell in Washington, I think that represents a tremendous value there at pick number 29. And again, you obviously have seen him when he plays off the ball, and the range and the ability to use him as a blitzer from off the ball is pretty special. And then I'm not so sure you can't just get to third down and let him kick outside full time and let him rush, and he might go get you 10 sacks doing that. So that would constitute a tremendous value there at pick number 29, in my opinion, based off the player. I think they would love coaching him there, and Dan Quinn would love him in Washington. Booker with the Bears, it's the biggest need the Bears have. When you look at them offensive line wise, they have got to be better. They've got to be more firm up the middle. And that's Booker's calling card, is how he can set his anchor and is just a strong, firm presence there, as well as someone who's so smart and bright and aware. I like the fact when you have a young quarterback in Caleb Williams surrounding him everywhere with as many smart players as you can. I just think that helps in a big way. And that doesn't necessarily have to just be veterans. It can be with really, really smart young players. And that's what Booker is. So I think that fits and solves a lot of their problems there. And then when it comes to Milroe, it's just, again, continuing to grow as a passer, get your cleats in the ground. There's times where he can get up a little bit on his toes. Just relax, be comfortable, drop your shoulders, put your cleats in the ground, and let the ball come off your hand. I mean, it's all in there. As a runner, I was talking to a baseball GM the other day, and we were, kind of referencing how we grade players in the scale that we use, the scouting scale. And in baseball, it goes up to 80, and they reference everything by saying someone's got, he's got a 65 fastball, he's got 70 speed, he's got, 50 makeup, what have you. And I was like, it's interesting. If I was thinking about this draft and you take all the quarterbacks and you took all their individual skills and you put them on that scale, I would say that he's the only one who has an 80 trait, which is his ability to run. Like he is an 80 runner. It is a special talent that he has. So I hope I don't know if he's going to run a 40 or not at the combine or at the pro day, but I would not be surprised if the second number was a 3, just watching the tape of how fast he is and how good of a runner he is. So now it's just continue to grow and show through the spring, meet with teams. He's going to have Zooms. He's going to have visits. Show them that you've got a thirst to improve. And I would not be surprised at all if somebody, was excited about that and they were to pull the trigger there at that point in time. So I think right now most teams have him more third, fourth round. But to your point, he's got an opportunity this spring to see if he can better that.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question is from Angelique Chingelis of Detroit News.
Thanks so much. And Daniel, I just wanted to ask you very quickly another Michigan question. Your impressions of the running backs, Donovan Edwards and Kalel Mullings, and Donovan seemed to improve his stock a bit at the Senior Bowl. And my second question is, way early in the call, you were talking about Mason Graham and said that you hope people don't overthink it too much with him. And I was just wondering what you meant, like what might they overthink with Mason?
Well, I think he's not going to be long. He's going to have short arms, body type wise. He's not going to be someone who's going to stand up on a stage, in a line full of these defensive linemen. And you're going to go, oh gosh, that looks like the top 10 defensive lineman. He doesn't cut that image. He doesn't have that body type. So, and I don't know testing wise, I have no clue, how he's going to run or jump or do all those things. I do know some of these other guys are going to blow it out. So that's kind of my point on him. But the tape is so good. I don't know many people remember this one, but I was in Baltimore with Kelly Gregg, and he's got more twitch to him, more suddenness than Kelly. But Kelly was a wrestler who played with leverage, and if he played on a field of wet paint, he did not have a drop of paint on him at the end of the game. And that's kind of the way it is with Mason. He's got such good balance and strength and leverage. I'm a big fan of his, but that's what I was referencing in terms of the spring. If we take the football pants off and put the shorts on, that maybe he would take on some water there. So that was my thought process on the running backs. Kalel Mullings was a fun one to me. You kind of go into the year and, Donovan is the one, he's on the video game and that's all the attention and all the eyeballs. And then I know he didn't quite have the year he wanted, but Mullings, for someone that's 227 pounds, I thought he had vision. I thought he ran with balance. He can push the pile. I love the fact he never put the ball on the ground. He didn't fumble. The SC game was the first one I watched. He's got the stiff arm and the long run to kind of set up his touchdown at the end of that game to really pull out one that they, might not should have won. But he was able to kind of lead the charge there. Not a factor in the passing game with only 6 catches. So that's something, we'll see if that impacts where he goes. But I had him more in like that 4th round range. Had a similar grade with Donovan. You've got some flashes with him this year. They flashed the power. He's another one who's got a nice little stiff arm. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. I just thought he didn't run with a lot of wiggle, and I didn't quite see the same burst that I was hoping to see. And you're right, the Senior Bowl was better, but he's someone I think that I don't think this year you saw his best. So I'm hoping that's gonna show up wherever he lands, and we'll see the younger version of him.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Just past the 2-hour mark, DJ. So hopefully we can get to these last few questions here in
Sure.
short order.
Yeah.
Next question is from Ryan Hinton of Saints Block Party.
Hey, DJ, sorry about that. I really wanted to find out, it seems like Jaxson Dart seems to be getting quite a bit of buzz in these last couple of weeks, especially since the Senior Bowl. I just wanted to know, what are your thoughts on him and kind of where does he level out at with this quarterback class?
Sure. I have him as the 3rd guy. The things that you like about Jaxson, I see there's some similarities. People will maybe raise their eyebrows on this, but I do see some similarities to Hurts when Hurts was going through the process, and that got kind of a similar build, similar frame. They're both really good athletes. They're both beloved by their teammates, say the right things, do all the right things, all that stuff kind of off the field. There's a lot of similarities there. And I thought with Jalen, he got better every year. He just kept taking steps, and we've seen it since he's come into the league. He just keeps getting better and better and better, because he's got great wiring. He works really, really hard, and there's a competitiveness and a toughness to him. So that's some of the things that I really like about Jaxson. This offense, they're not going to get real deep into progressions. Lane does a really good job of getting to the point where, early in progressions, you're going to have places to distribute the football. So you'll see some RPOs, you'll see some seams, they take a lot of deep shots, but they're kind of designed deep shots. So you kind of know where the ball's going, but he throws a nice deep ball. To work on from that regard, not just kind of getting deeper in progressions, but there's times where I think his eyes can be a little bit ahead of his feet, just kind of syncing that up, marrying that up a little bit better. And just, continuing to be cautious and careful with the football in some key moments. That's some areas for him, but I have met him. He's a really, really good kid, presents himself really well. And I think there's a lot of tools to work with. So that's why I have him as a third quarterback.
Thanks.
Next question is from Jim Alexander of Real Talker.
Sorry. Hey, DJ. Two Bears questions here. First one, do you think they'll have their pick of choosing for the offensive lineman available in the draft? And second of all, when you look back at Rome Odunze, he didn't have the best of years last year. Do you still project him to be the top talent that you were projecting him to be last year?
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about him. I think he's going to be really, really good. There was, obviously there's issues up front, offensive line wise, and there was a lot of mouths to feed there. So I'm excited about Ben Johnson coming in there. I'm excited about him getting, to really have an opportunity to take off there. Caleb's going to be better. I just think everything else around him is going to be better. But when I watch the tape, I still see somebody that can get open. I still see somebody that can make plays. And I think you'll see him. His makeup's so good and the talent's there. I don't really worry about him going forward. And then when you look at where they're picking, do they get, the first crack at an offensive lineman? There's some teams ahead of them that could pull the trigger. So I think that's TBD. But I do think the fact that, their need being along the interior, I think they're going to have their pick of interior guys. So that, I know it's not the sexiest thing in the world. I know people don't want to get super excited about taking a guard with the 10th pick, but if you watch the Bears play last year, you might be excited about taking a guard with the 10th pick.
Thanks, DJ.
Yep.
Next question, we're going to go international. Ricardo Gomez from Portugal.
Hola DJ, saludos desde México. Hello DJ, greetings from Mexico.
Oh, from Mexico.
¿Quiénes son algunos prospectos fuera del radar que podrían elevar su stock en el combine? What are some under the radar prospects you think could make a huge impact during the combine and rise their stock?
That's a great question. I am so glad you asked it in English because I'm going to be honest. I did not pass Spanish 1 the first time I took it. I had to retake it. So I'm not proud of that, but I did eventually get a passing grade, although I think it was a C. When I'm looking at some underrated players that I think are going to flash at the combine, well, I've mentioned Hairston from Kentucky. He's going to absolutely fly, and I mean he's in my top 50. But I think he's got a chance to run himself up into the first round conversation. You'll hear some buzz and some conversation about him. There's a couple of edge rushers and defensive linemen that I think you're going to see test really, really well. That I'm high on. That are good football players. Savion Jones from LSU is going to work out really well. He's 289 pounds, and he was dominant in the Senior Bowl game. I mean, he's going to be a day 2 pick, but I think you could see him really put on a show there and run particularly well. You look at the edge rushers that are going to be impressive. I think Braden Swinson from LSU, his teammate, has a chance to work out, run really well. Amon Hassanin from Boise State, who's a great story, is a kid who grew up in Egypt. He's productive there at Boise State. he's he's going to test. I think he's going to surprise some people with how he works out and how he tests. So those are some of the guys that I think you'll see create some buzz there. I'm trying to think of an offensive lineman I can find for you. Well, I mean, he's not necessarily under the radar, but I do think Membo from Missouri is going to work out extremely well at 330 pounds. We'll be talking about him.
Next question is from Phil Jones of New Stitch Media.
Hey, Daniel. Thanks for having us on today.
No problem.
So just jumping on the number 6 pick with the Raiders. I know you have on your mock draft 2.0, you got Shedeur falling to them. But, in the last few years, we've seen the Raiders needed a quarterback, and, they kind of just didn't go that route. Is there a possibility if Shedeur is not there at 6, besides going defense like Will Johnson, like you said earlier, would they go someone like, maybe McMillan or maybe probably Jeanty, and then come down to the 37th pick? Would they probably look at a Jaxson Dart or maybe Jalen Milroe?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dart would enter into that discussion. Milroe, that would be a little bit early based off where I have him, but I think you do all your homework in the spring and get to know him and work him out, and obviously the upside is there. So I wouldn't rule out eventually getting to that point. I'm not there at that point at this point in time. In terms of some of those other options, yeah, I mean, you could go on a whole host of different directions there. I would love Jeanty. The only thing, and again, he's my 3rd overall player. I'm a huge Jeanty believer, and I am one when it comes to running backs. My theory is not, do you take him high? Do you not take him high? My theory is that you take the running back when you have everything in place that he can hit. All his carries matter. I just don't want to give away carries. They only have so many carries in their body, and I want them all to matter and to count for something. So I just don't know if the Raiders team-wise are there at this point in time where that would make as much sense. To me, that's more kind of a finishing piece than one of those early pieces there. So I mean, we've kind of seen it with the Giants with Saquon Barkley. Like, we saw Saquon Barkley on the team that wasn't ready for him, and then we saw Saquon Barkley with the team that was ready-made, and you can see the impact and the value there. So I just, that would be my one counter argument there, even though I have Jeanty as the 3rd best player in the draft.
Real quick, with Chip Kelly's offense, between the 3 quarterbacks, who would be a good fit for it?
I think Shedeur fits it really well. I think he sees the field well. I think he make good decisions. Chip can play out there with tight ends now. We've seen his offense morph and change over the years. So I just think he'd be able to get them in the right play, get them where they want to be, and deliver the ball accurately, make good decisions. So that's why that one I've had, I think, for a couple times there, of that being the fit. And I think Shedeur not necessarily having a huge arm, in that division and in that home stadium, it doesn't matter. He's got plenty of arm to do everything he needs to do there.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yep.
Next question is from Mark Weiser of the Athens Banner Herald.
Hey, Daniel, you alluded to another big Georgia draft class. Safety Dan Jackson did not get one of their 14 combine invites. Did that surprise you? And what value do you see in him at the next level?
Yeah, I was surprised because he had a good week at the Senior Bowl. He had a couple big hits, both in practice and in the game. So that one caught me a little bit off guard. Now he's not the biggest guy in terms of what would he weigh here? He was 194 pounds. So yeah, he's 5'11", 6, so just under 6 foot, 194 pounds. But tape wise, I mean, I had him in like the 5th round is the grade that I gave him. He's got a quick pedal, can plant and drive, big hits on tape as well as at the Senior Bowl. He plays with a physical presence, takes good angles. The There are some misses. He has some ricochet misses just because he doesn't wrap up, but it's not for a lack of throwing himself in there. But I thought he saw the field well, and I also thought he had a little value as a blitzer. So, yeah, I thought he was. I think he's definitely a draftable player. Was a little surprised he didn't get an invite.
And quickly, 4 Georgia offensive linemen at the combine. Thoughts on Tate Ratledge, Jared Wilson, Dylan Fairchild, and Xavier Truss?
Sure. I'll go through them here. Wilson to me is the top one of the bunch. As a center, wide base. He plays with strong hands. He takes good angles to second level. Real firm. He's aware on twists and games. He can recover and stay attached. I didn't think he was an elite athlete. He just doesn't really get beat, and he's a good solid player. Ratledge was at right guard. He's more of a seal and position blocker. Takes good angles, but kind of more all upper body, just wrestle. The side note, watching that Florida tape Florida's got that 400-pound defensive tackle, and that defensive tackle threw him around a little bit. But had some initial pop, just didn't do a really good job of sustaining. Truss, and I had him kind of as a down the line guy. Truss, right tackle, position blocker, some right guard as well. Just plays a little bit high, struggles to change direction. Didn't think he was able to really bend and sink all that well, but does flash some power and can pull and kick out. Again, day 3 guy for me. And then we got Fairchild. Was that the last one?
Yeah, that's right.
Fairchild, left guard, strong hands. Does a good job reworking his hands, can control the point of attack, just a little bit stiff. Again, plays a little bit high, looks for work, just a little bit limited athletically. So I thought Wilson was on a different tier personally than the rest of them, but they're all going to get picked.
Thanks much.
Sure.
Next question is from Joanne Coley of Commanders Game Day.
Hi, DJ. How you doing?
Doing great.
So as you know, the Commanders, the offensive line has been a weak spot this season, and they're also in need of a solid number 2. That's been the big talk. So from your perspective, which offensive lineman in the draft can make like an immediate impact? And are there any wide receivers who can step in that number 2 role and complement Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I'll start with the receivers. Yeah, there's definitely receivers. They're picking at the bottom of the first round. They're at pick 29. I would love to run the card up for either Golden or Ibuka. Luther Burden we haven't talked about him yet. He's in that mix. Teams will have those guys in different orders, but I think any of those 3 guys would be, good complementary players.
Sorry, who's the third one?
Which with Luther Burden from Missouri.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So I compared him to Stephon Diggs coming out of college. Real quick, athletic slot, a lot of quick hitters, really strong hands, great body control. He's got some burst and make miss after the catch. His production dipped this year. His yards per catch dipped, but it was more of a result of kind of some bad balls coming his way and just not getting as many opportunities. So he's someone that if he has a good spring, he might not even be there when they pick. But those are some options there that at the bottom of the first round I think would make a lot of sense. And then what was the other position you were asking about for immediate help?
Our offensive line.
Yeah, offensive line wise, same guys we've kind of mentioned, Donovan Jackson, Gray Zabel. Those would be a couple that would be plug and play guys right out the jump. If they were to be there at pick number 29. And then from, a tackle perspective, you start getting into, Simmons, if he were to be there, he's coming off of an injury, but he is out of Ohio State. He's ready to go. He could start right away.
Thank you.
Sure.
Next question is from Jamal at News 4 Jackson, Jacksonville, Florida.
Hey, DJ. Want to ask you about a couple of the guys that are from Jacksonville. Pat Bryant out of Illinois and Jalen Rivers from Miami going to be up there at the Combine. What have you seen from those guys where you think they could end up in the draft?
Sure. Let's start first of all with Pat Bryant. I gave him a 3rd round grade. There's a big clump of receivers in there though, so you're going to see some of these guys, fall beyond that. But outside, he's wins on a lot of slants. He's an excellent adjuster down the field. It's one of my favorite things about him. He's a hands catcher, only 1 drop on the year. He's strong with the ball in his hands after the catch. He can win early with his release, and I love the toughness to work in traffic and kind of win some of those combat catches. And I love the size that he has. I just think he'd be a great fit there. as a 3rd round pick. And then Rivers from Miami, obviously you start with the size, massive left tackle out there. He is, he's one that I've said this about some of the alignment, but just needs to play a little lower, can get a little bit tall, a little bit high, and that struggles with some of the redirect things, against counters and things like that. But can move, outside, can pull and seal. As a pass protector, he's a little bit of a scooper with his hands, kind of an underhook scooper. Some guys are, better at that than others, but you don't see that quite as much. But he's someone that I thought was a day 3 pick, early day 3, with a ton of upside.
And hey, one quick follow-up. The Jaguars sitting at 5. Where do you think they could go with a guy like Tetairoa McMillan work to pair with BTJ?
That's a little higher than I have him, but I have him as a top receiver. So, they could, you'd have 2 power forward types. I mean, he's got unbelievable body control and hands to go play above the rim, like red zone weapon, Drake London-esque. He's just a real smooth mover. So, I have him as the 15th player. So, I mean, gosh, I guess that's not that far removed from where I have him graded. So I think you could make that argument. That'd be a fun pairing.
Next question is from Alan Alford of Sports Talk Show in Tampa.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel, for doing this. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much. And so my question is, Hall of Famer Deion Sanders, Coach Prime did say that Shedeur Sanders, he doesn't want his son playing for 4 teams. That's the Browns, the Titans, the Jets, and Bears. Will this cause an issue, let's say, if he does want to get taken by one of those teams?
Is that like new news, by the way? I hadn't seen that.
It's something that, his dad basically said that, hey, I don't want him going to these 4 teams. I don't know if it's so new, but it's something that his dad put out there.
Yeah.
So I know that you have him going 11th. I know you have him going 11th, but just in case something does happen, it's a draft. How do you feel this might play itself out?
Yeah, I mean, look, I haven't seen all of it to wrap my head around it, but look, I think if you're a team and somebody doesn't want to play for you at that position, it's kind of a big deal. I don't know that I would, I don't know that I would fight City Hall on that one if someone really was adamant about not wanting to play there. So again, it's that would be kind of unique, but I do think that Deion's right and smart from the standpoint that fit is incredibly important. And we look at all these different quarterbacks last year, just watching the Sam Darnold last year, seeing Baker Mayfield for the last couple of years, you have seen, where you are matters and fit matters. It's extremely important. So, if that's what Deion said or did, I would totally understand his, his reasoning for wanting to make sure that his son end up in the right spot. So that's the parent side of it. And then from the team side of it, I don't think you're going to want to, bring in somebody that doesn't necessarily want to be there. So, again, I haven't seen the report. I haven't seen the information yet, but that would be my reaction to it.
And just a quick follow-up on that. Do you think maybe the dad she could reconsider that position?
Well, I don't think. I mean, look, Deion's not the average, coach or dad. Like, he knows the NFL inside and out. I don't think that Deion would speak or say something without doing his homework and saying it with conviction. So, I wouldn't want to be the person who's going to try and change Deion's mind. If he's said that publicly, then I know he's done his homework on that, and I wouldn't imagine that would change.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Next question is from Ellie Mae Williamson in Tennessee.
Hi, thanks for having this whole call. It's been very informative. You already mentioned the Tennessee players and how you stood on each one of them, but which one would you feel is more strong for this combine and this setup? I know you mentioned Lott and Pierce teams being not too sure about him, and then also Sampson. But what do you see from that group of 6 coming?
Well, I'm hoping Pierce does everything, because he sure as heck plays explosive and fast. So I would imagine he would test extremely well. I'm on Sampson, just in talking to guys around the league and everything, and who are familiar with his training and stuff, that he plays extremely fast and explosive, but the testing might not match that. So just in terms of him ripping off a 4.3 or something like that. So the one that would entice me and intrigue me the most would absolutely be Pierce.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question is Adam West with the Saints question.
Hi, DJ. Thanks for doing this always. Really appreciate you, man.
Sure.
Just from kind of knowing what I know, the Saints really feel enamored with potentially adding Will Johnson and Tetairoa McMillan potentially at 9. You kind of spoke to why Will Johnson may be there, and I think prior to this season, the idea of those two players being there at 9 kind of seemed ludicrous going by like pre-mock drafts. But can you maybe talk about, Will Johnson's 2023 of like what he would bring as a player, and Tetairoa, as I think you made the Drake London comparison, is kind of what I see him as, of like what he would bring to an offense if he was the pick at 9 for the Saints.
Yeah. I mean, I think that comes down to the personnel department and the coaching staff getting on the same page. The reason why I haven't had them going with a skill player is just based off of where Kellen was coming from as a head coach. But, you get together with the personnel department there, and they'll come up with the best plan. But, Will has got, he is central casting for what you want a corner to look like. He is tall. He's rangy. He's a fluid athlete, fluid mover. He's got really, really good eyes. He's got excellent ball skills. So that's where you start. That's a really good foundation. And I think in 23, I just thought there was a little more physicality to him than we saw this year. So, that's, that is what it is. And then I just thought guys got on top of him a couple times this year. And that could be just, it could be not necessarily have to be a speed thing, can be a focus thing. And, they played a lot of games the year before. Obviously, the team was in a different position. There wasn't as good of a team. It's all coming off of a long season. He knows, he's going to be a top 15 pick going into the year. And so I can understand how maybe it didn't match what we'd seen previously. But then you get to McMillan. Again, I just mentioned him and talking about him a minute ago. The size is outstanding. The body control and ball skills are as good as you're going to see. There were some, I didn't talk about really the negatives with him last time, but there are some times just on backside of routes, I don't really see him busting it all the time. So, I'd like to see that just be a little bit more consistent and competitive with each rep in that regard. But someone who can play above the rim in a big, big way. They'd have some fun with him, especially down there in the red area. But, I just think that it'd be curious to see. We call it a copycat league, people paying attention to the teams that are playing well and winning, and coming off of a Super Bowl that was just dominated at the line of scrimmage. And you have the coach who was involved in that game. That's why I was leaning more towards that side of things than a skill guy.
Thank you so much, man.
Sure.
Next question is from Bleacher Report's Authentic.
Hey, thanks for taking the time, DJ. So I wanted to piggyback off of what Ryan Dunleavy was talking about, where you have the New York Giants possibly passing up on Shedeur Sanders. And if that is a possibility, how do you see them addressing a quarterback in free agency, considering that they have a coach and a general manager on the hot seat and no quarterbacks on the roster?
Yeah, that's why I was just, that was the whole Stafford theory, of that's the one that was floating around, and that's why I went that way with the mock draft. In terms of other options, I don't think Sam Darnold's probably going to be in a hurry to run back to New York, but that's the best option in terms of the talent that is out there. And a team that needs to, you mentioned it's kind of tricky because you want to get your quarterback of the future, but there's some pressure, at least from the outside, not knowing anything on the inside, to have a good year next year. So, relying on a young guy there can be a little bit tricky, but the veteran options, somehow trading for Matt Stafford would be way up there for me in the short term, at least. With Sam Darnold being, I just don't see that as a possibility there. You're looking at, potentially Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins. There's a whole lot of other guys, but Yeah, it's not. It's a lot of people have said this, and not just my opinion, but talking to a lot of people around the league. Man, it's not coming off of a year last year. We had all those quarterbacks. Sometimes it's not just it's not just if you're bad, it's when you're bad, and there's just not as many of those options this year.
And just secondly, I wanted to ask you about a couple of prospects here. I shoot content for the University of Maryland, so I wanted your take where these two guys might go in the draft. It would be Ty Felton and Caden Prather, the two wide receivers. And then also just wanted to get your opinion on Savion Williams out of TCU.
Sure. I'll do Savion Williams, first of all, is he's a fun dude to watch, man. Like just all the different ways that they use him, just like a jumbo athlete, does the Wildcat stuff, plays receiver. He's a big, strong, athletic, physical dude. And to me, it just drops more than anything else. Had the 8 drops this year. So, cleaning that stuff up, but he's a fun toy to play with in terms of all the different things that he can do and how they use him there. The Maryland guys, talking about those 2 wide receivers with Felton, productive, can play inside, outside. He can, he can wall guys off in traffic. He can build speed. He's fearless working in the middle of the field. He can go up and get it and high point the football. So I thought he played a little bit bigger than his size. And then with Prather, Prather has that size outside, wins on a lot of shallow crossers, quick screens. Only had 1 drop. I just didn't know if he really had that second gear, so I'm anxious to see him run. But does a really nice job using his body, shield guys off, wall guys off with that big frame.
What round do you foresee those guys being drafted in possibly?
Yep, I had Felton as third round. Again, there's a big clump of those guys, 3rd, 4th round, and then it was more 5th round for me with Prather.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
Last few questions here. Mookie Hawkins and Buffalo. Mookie, you're on mute. I can see you trying to unmute yourself. There you go.
There we go. DJ, my guy, how's it going?
Good. What's up, man?
Not much, man. I'll see you Tuesday up in Indy, man. But
Nice.
Bills at 30. Lots of help on that defensive line, whether defensive edge, D tackle, cornerback, safety. Which route do you think that the Bills will go at pick 30?
Well, I mean, too bad they can't go all the above, right? I mean, this is a team that it's just got to get better on 3rd down, get off the field, find ways to get off the field. So I'm always going to lean front to back versus back to front. So, looking at options for them, they can get after the quarterback and, make a difference from that standpoint. That's the direction that I would go. So if I'm pulling up, I've talked about Izuruku is kind of an interesting one. I've talked a ton about him from BC. Someone that just knows how to win and can really rush the quarterback. You've got more, Shamar Stewart gives you more of that upside, a little bit raw, but just big time explosiveness. You've got the options to trade back a little bit if you want. And now you kind of get into like the Landon Jackson area. Out of Arkansas. So those are, some of those edge rushers, the DTs. I love Derek Harmon from Oregon as a fit there. Someone who can disrupt run and pass, play on the other side of the line of scrimmage. And I think there's a chance he's there. That would be a fun one to add to their mix.
Absolutely. And on the flip side, the Bills don't really need too much on the offensive side, but I think they do need a playmaker. But my guy, Authentic, mentioned it first. How would a guy such as a Savion Williams fit in this Bills offense?
I think you're looking at like, Debo's a little bit of the path that you would try and follow there. He's not refined. Like you're going to have to be patient. Like you're going to just try and find ways to get him the ball right now. We're going to give him a reverse. We're going to get him a bubble. We're going to let him do some, if you want to take a little off Josh, I'm sure Josh probably ended up getting a new contract here before too long. You want to take a little bit of that off him. You can give him some reps back there down on the goal line, let him take that abuse as a runner. But in terms of developing him and polishing him up as a receiver, that's going to require a little bit of patience.
All right, my guy. Appreciate you. Safe travels.
Thank you.
All right, we're going back to Mexico here. Oscar Clariga.
Hello, thank you very much. Hello from Mexico, Daniel. Nice to see you again.
Good to see
The
you.
first topic, you talked early in this Zoom call about the connection between Chip Kelly and Dillon Gabriel. If I
Yeah.
don't remember wrong, was in UCLA.
That's right. He went there and then was only there for a couple weeks. Chip left, and then Dillon Gabriel ended up transferring to Oregon. So I knew it was deep in the recesses of my mind. I knew there was the connection there. Thank you for bringing that to light.
No, thanks to you. And I have a couple of questions. The first one, what is your opinion about Jalen Milroe, the QB of Alabama? And the other one, here in Mexico, we have a great fan base, the Dallas Cowboys and the Pittsburgh Steelers. How looks to you the scenario for this couple of teams, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Dallas Cowboys? Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you very much. With Milroe, again, we talked about him just a little bit earlier there. As a runner, he's elite. Like, that's the best trait that anybody has in this quarterback class, is his ability as a runner. Just going to take some time and patience and development with him in the pass game. Just in terms of, again, a lot of it's mechanically, just cleaning some of those things up, get your cleats in the ground, etc. But a lot to work with there. And it's, again, you're going to have a real plan there. I've mentioned, I think the Steelers were one of the teams you were mentioning. If the Steelers did decide to re-sign Justin Fields and make him their quarterback going forward, I wouldn't mind marrying Milroe up with him. If you got Milroe potentially in like the third round, and you want to just become a physical, pound it team that go out and get a dynamic runner in this draft, which you can find. I know Najee's a free agent. I like to see him get a little more explosive in the backfield. But having Milroe to kind of develop behind Fields would be kind of fun, just to really go all in on that approach. And then with the Cowboys, what they're going to do, this is more than anything else with them, draft wise is one thing, but a lot of people in the league are curious about the Micah Parsons thing. Are they going to pay him? Is this going to get done? What happens with him? That could go a long way in determining what they look like defensively. But they were pretty god awful last year on that side of the ball. So finding some help up front. Odigizua is a free agent as well. So defensive tackle in a very rich defensive tackle draft. That was a direction I could see them looking.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, last two questions. This man has been very patient. Zinni Abraham, you're up.
Hey, DJ, how you doing?
Good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you too, man. Hey, quick update on Audible. As of 5 hours ago, BMW Sports and Sporting News reported that Deion Sanders himself said that the Titans, the Browns, and the Giants are the only ones he wants Shedeur to talk to. And now
okay.
Yeah, now three-bagger question. First of all,
yes, sir.
Browns fans have been screaming, hey, some of them, they want Mason Graham as the 2 pick because they want to appease Myles Garrett. I want your thoughts on that. And then for the I prefer to call them the Oakland Las Vegas Raiders, as you know. Why not Ashton Jeanty falling to that place? Your thoughts? Oh, and by the way, one more thing. Today is Craig Woodson's birthday. Go Bears!
There you go.
What team is he going to?
Ooh, he can go to my team. I wish I had one. I like him. He's one of my guys here in this draft class. So I think he'll find his way somewhere in the third round, fourth round. But he's a good player. When it comes to Jeanty, you were saying there with the Raiders, right? If Jeanty there, yeah. I mean, the only thing I would just be is this team ready to take off right now? Because I'm just not big on using up what our limited carries a running back has in his lifespan on a team that's not ready to win right now. I almost would rather kind of build up the rest of the infrastructure and then kind of drop the quarterback or drop the electric running back in there at that point in time, so that every single one of his carries is helping us, where we want to go.
Are you saying then that Pete Carroll is not equipped to make the team ready?
I think where their roster is presently and where there's 3 playoff teams inside their own division, that they are. I mean, Pete Carroll. I love Pete Carroll, and he's a good coach with a winning pedigree. And I'm excited to see what Spytek does there. Who's is a good personnel guy. I do not think they are one off season away from climbing the mountain inside their division. So
I have them going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, the Raiders. Well, there you go. From your lips to God's ears. My brother-in-law is a Raiders fan, and he'll be very excited to hear that.
Thank you.
And then with Mason Graham, to me with Cleveland at 2, the quarterback thing is just, I've flirted with the idea of giving them somebody other than a quarterback, and I did it in the first mock draft, and I'd heard, consideration with Cousins is a possibility there because the familiarity with him, as well as the price tag, which would be next to nothing, similar to what we had last year in Pittsburgh with Russell Wilson, with another team, paying the bill. But gosh, I mean, they're one of those teams that I just think that if Cam Ward was there, I would have a hard time thinking Cleveland would pass on him.
I wanted your take on this. I gotta ask you, why is Jameis Winston not better than Kirk Cousins, given the season Cousins had down here in Atlanta, and the fact that, hey, look, offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey got fired, and he messed up his footwork all the season long. It was just awful what he did with Winston and Watson and the other quarterbacks, and he should have got fired. So, I mean, how can you justify bringing Cousins, to the Browns? I'm just curious.
Yep, I would say because Kirk Cousins, I would say Jameis Winston's best season was probably Kirk Cousins has probably had 7 seasons better than his best season. And I would say last year, Kirk Cousins was not coming off of a healthy year. Kirk Cousins couldn't move at all. They did not, it was a terrible fit. It was a terrible match. It didn't work out.
James Winston's best year was 2021 under Sean Payton, 14 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. That was better than anything Kirk Cousins ever posted. Got to check that out.
I'll pull up Kirk. I want to do it right now, but I can promise you Kirk Cousins has had much better seasons than 14 touchdowns.
I give you a drink. How's that?
What's up? Okay.
Yeah, we're going to get to the last question here, but I appreciate that, Zinni. Last question, Darnell Salins from Playmakers Blog.
Hello, Daniel. Thank you for doing this.
Sure.
My question is about the Rams. I see in your latest mock draft you had Darius Alexander from Toledo at the 26th spot. Do you see him as a fit for the Rams, or do you see the Rams can possibly go offense with that pick?
Yeah, Darius Alexander, he is a little bit older, which we'll see some teams care about that more than others. But just in terms of body type, like range, explosive, that's kind of what the Rams have got, a bunch of explosive defenders, and they've added to that bunch. I think it's the best young defensive line in the NFL. And I was kind of just, and maybe some of it's the newness of watching the Super Bowl and just seeing the waves of guys that Philly had. But man, you just go get another twitchy, explosive, dynamic guy. I've kind of wrote down on my paper when I was watching defensive linemen this year, the ones I circled back on after the Super Bowl was over. And I just wrote the word, I just wrote vet, VET on my sheet. And I just said, look at your notes on a player. And if you see the words, violent, explosive, twitchy over and over and over again, like looking for vets, I'm like, those are the guys that I think you want, because that's what we just saw win the Super Bowl. So that's why I had that fit there. And if they were going to go in another direction, there could be a little bit of a makeover there in their receiver room. So, Emeka Egbuka, if he were to get there, I think that one makes a lot of sense for him. He'd be a great fit, and someone who would just be plug and play for a team that's ready to win right now. And I would say the same thing for Matthew Golden. So those would be guys I would love for the Rams.